Yes, everybody's present. Give us a minute to go live.
Okay, thank you.
All right, President Moran, we're live.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 10th, 2022, and this is the regular meeting of the Governing Board of the Litchfield Elementary School District. I hereby call this meeting to order, and we will begin this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me and stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. We will now take a moment for silent reflection. Please join me for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you very much. We will now move on to agenda item 3A, which is recognitions and celebrations, which will be presented by Ms. Shelley Hornback.
Thank you, President Moran, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning. In the world of education, big news often comes at the end of the school year, and we've got some real doozies for you tonight, so buckle up. We're going to begin this evening by sharing a celebration in honor of Superintendent Gunning. We are celebrating her remarkable achievement. After 18 months of hard work in the midst of a global pandemic, she has earned her National Superintendent certification. Here with us this evening to share in this celebration is Superintendent Gunning's mentor from the National Superintendent Certification process. We're going to invite him to take a photo with Superintendent Gunning and Melissa Zeidema and Dr. Dowling in just a moment. But please, let's first introduce the retired superintendent of Wickenburg Unified School District, Dr. Howard Carlson.
President Moran, members of the board, Superintendent Gunning. My name is Howard Carlson. I'm here tonight to congratulate Superintendent Gunning on completing the rigorous AASA National Superintendent Certification Program. As was mentioned, this is an 18-month program which focuses on instructional leadership, stakeholder communication, budgeting practices, completion of a capstone project, board superintendent relations, and much more. Superintendent Gunning joins an elite group of fewer than 30 superintendents in the state of Arizona that have achieved this distinction. And tonight I want to present her with her National Superintendent certification. But I just want to say prior to that this district is blessed to have Superintendent Gunning. Having worked with her not only over the past 18 months, but actually since she started here, she is an individual that can handle complex issues. She's able to deal with challenges, and she always does so at an even keel. And that is something that is very hard to find in leadership. So I congratulate her and want to give her this award tonight.
Thank you, Board Member Zeidema and Board Member Dr. Dowling, for joining us here. We'll take a couple of photos. Congratulations, Superintendent Gunning. We're all so proud of you. Okay, the hits are coming tonight. Get ready, folks. You may have seen this on social media. You might have heard this already, but we cannot stop celebrating because Luke Jenke, the principal at Verado Elementary School, was named by Maricopa County Superintendent Steve Watson as an exemplary principal of the year. Principal Jenke, come on up. Superintendent Steve Watson says that he recognizes leaders who intentionally and strategically nurture school cultures where teacher and student voices set and realize the school's vision. This is an opportunity where Superintendent Watson tries to directly address the national teacher shortage that no school is immune to. And Principal Jenke is an exemplary principal because he is making Verado Elementary School a place where teachers love to come to work. They want to sign up again and again and again to participate in your team, your family, your leadership. Luke Jenke, we couldn't be prouder of you. Congratulations. Let's take some photos here at the front of the room. We had a super secret surprise assembly at the Superstar School, and oh man, you could just feel the energy in the room. Those kids adore this guy. And not just because he's tall, like Superintendent Gunning said, but because he's just that awesome. Thank you. We've got a couple more photos if you want to stay close. So West Side Impact is an organization, a cohort, if you will, of the West Side school districts who partner and work together to do right by all the kids in the West Valley. And each year they have the West Side Impact Teacher of the Year Award. And a lot of our principals and administrators and folks in this room have won that award. And we had lots of teachers at every single one of our schools win that award this year. We're so, so proud of them. But this year, a new award came out. It's the West Side Impact Principal of the Year. And our principal peers at Litchfield School District got to get together and choose who they thought should be their Principal of the Year. And they landed on no one else but our very own Principal of Barbara B. Roby Elementary School, Amanda Acosta. I wanted to know why Principal Acosta won, because all of our principals are really, truly fabulous. From the bottom of the heart, I can tell you they are all amazing. So why did she win? I'm understanding it's because of her deep understanding of curriculum and the PLC process, and because she's so good at building a strong family, especially during a pandemic. And I tell you, we went to a surprise assembly for Amanda Acosta this week, and boy, she stopped and looked at every single kid straight in the eye. Hugs, love, acceptance, connection. These kids were just falling over themselves just to touch a little piece of that gold. Congratulations. Rattler family, come on up. You're here for a reason. We would love you to stay in this photo if you're willing. Thank you. Here we go. Okay, those are some of our most amazing leaders, but I tell you, they just line up in droves behind them. Everyone around here just shines, and these are some of our very best examples. Another outstanding example is a 4th grade teacher at Mabel Paget Elementary School. We have with us tonight Miss Mary Mahoney. Mrs. Mahoney is so humble. It took a lot to get her here, but she deserves our recognition because she led the recent district-wide STEAM fair. This was remarkable in at least 2 ways. First of all, the community partnerships that came out of the district-wide STEAM fair were truly impressive. She had 18 judges there, including our Pebble Creek neighbors, representatives from Palo Verde, district VIPs, high school honor students. Of course, we had Dr. Dowling, Melissa Zeidema, and board member Danielle Clymer all there to judge over 200 student projects. It's like our science fair, right? But on steroids. It was absolutely remarkable. And that's just one really great thing that was happening there. The other truly impressive thing was academic rigor, inspiring our children to really dig deep, to grow and learn, and to shine. It was so impressive. We appreciate you for creating pathways so that children can grow and learn. And we also want to thank Laura Combs, Director of Educational Technology, for helping with this project. Laura Combs, we appreciate you as well. But Mary Mahoney, you are the star of the show, and we're so grateful. Congratulations. Thank you so much. We say it time and time again, it just is just so true. Schools cannot do it alone. We need outstanding staff dedicated to show up each and every day and just pour their hearts into these kids, and that's what we love to do. But we need a community behind us to make that happen. And tonight we are celebrating the board of directors who are here from the Litchfield Elementary School District Educational Foundation. This is a small and mighty crew that serves at its own private nonprofit organization, and they're basically the PTA for the school district, right? They don't serve just one school, they serve us all, and they focus on teacher and staff recognition. Their primary purpose is to celebrate teacher and staff excellence. So all year round, they're thinking of fun ways to do this, but what they mostly do is host the annual Pride Awards. That's our best of the best. That's our Teacher and Staff Member of the Year. And tomorrow night, they are hosting an event with 41 certified and classified employees, each of whom will receive a check for $325, plus the love and recognition of their community and their peers. So tonight, we especially want to thank the Board of Directors from the Litchfield Educational Foundation. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being the arms into the community, for reaching out and uniting others to join us in celebration and support of our hardworking teachers so that our students can thrive. Please come up for some photos. Tonight we have President Catherine Pruzinski here in the yellow. She's the Executive Director of Verado, Victory at Verado, and Alamar in Avondale. We also have with us in the blue blazer, Mr. Paul Bentz. He's the Senior Vice President of Arizona High Ground. Sandra Creta is here in the black slacks with Creta Law. She's also a parent from Rancho Santa Fe Elementary School and a longtime leader in the Litchfield Park community and one of the first ever PTA moms at Western Sky. We have Miss Andy Phillips. President Moran, on a personal note, if I may, I'd like to add that this is my last board meeting before retiring next month. It's been my great honor to serve as a champion of our teachers and our students and our staff. Never did I dream when I left the governing board to accept this position 6 years ago that it would be so difficult. But kindness and partnership and hope have buoyed me through those rough days. Our staff is a professional, committed team of experts who devote themselves fully to developing tomorrow's leaders. With the support of our community, because schools cannot do it alone, this team of more than 1,300 people is prepared to move mountains. It's been my deep honor to serve alongside these A-plus leaders. And Superintendent Gunning, I thank you for the opportunity to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hornback. I would like to offer my congratulations as well to Superintendent Gunning, Principal Janke, and Principal Acosta on their awards and the fruits of their hard labor, many hours that have been put into dedication on their campuses and in their jobs, as well as a huge thank you to Mary Mahoney. I attended the STEAM fair. It was phenomenal, very impressive. And I know that Mary put in countless hours to make that a success. As a former member of the Education Foundation, I understand the number of hours and effort that those folks are putting in as well. So a big thank you to them. And I know that all of the recipients of the Pride Awards this year are going to be rewarded as well. So thank you for your hard work and dedication. And finally, Director Hornback, I have had the pleasure of working with you for many years, both on and outside of this board, and you are a consummate professional and your dedication is unparalleled. You will be greatly missed, but I wish you well in your retirement. Now we will move on to agenda item 3B, which is the discussion of proposed boundary revisions to areas 24E, 25B, 26B, and 38, which will be led by Executive Director Qualls.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning, and our community members. So we are going through a boundary proposal revision this evening. We have a 9-member committee that meets throughout the year to look at student enrollment and new developments in the area. Tonight we have a recommendation to modify the boundaries for 24E, 25B, 26, and Area 38. This aligns with our strategic plan pillars, student success and service. The recommendation is what's best for students. It'll decrease the overcrowding that would be happening at Berlin Soto. There's no financial impact. And this will be impacting future students residing in these areas. And rather than attending Berlin Soto, they will attend Verrado Middle School and either Mabel Pageant Elementary or Scott Libby Elementary. The purpose is to adjust the boundaries before people move into the homes. That way we aren't disrupting them once they have been established in a school. The residents and property owners were notified April 15th. We had a study session April 26th and again this evening. On the agenda for tonight, this item is there for approval. If approved, the boundaries would go into effect for the 22-23 school year. We look at the K-8 boundary map. The changes are in the hash marks, and in purple show the students in K-5 that would go to Scott Libby, and those in orange would go to Mabel Pageant. When we look at grades 6 through 8, the areas with the yellow hash mark would go to Verrado Middle School. This demonstrates the housing developments and plots currently in place. The 24E is recommended to go from Berlin to Scott Libby. 25B is expanded to the east and north. We look at 26, so K5 to Mabel Pageant, and then to Verrado Middle. The last area is 38, and those also would attend Mabel Pageant and Verrado Middle School. I'm Wendy Qualls. Do you have any questions?
Do any board members have questions or items for discussion on this item? I am not hearing any. Executive Director Qualls, are there any changes from the proposed boundaries that we discussed at our previous meeting?
No, this was exactly the same.
Okay, excellent. I don't hear any questions, so we can move on to our next item, which is public comment regarding proposed boundary revisions. Are there any public comments?
There
On
are
this
no
topic.
public comments.
Okay, excellent. Then we will move on to agenda item 3D, which is the maintenance operation budget override polling presentation, which will be presented by Mr. Bentz.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, my name is Paul Bentz. I am the Senior Vice President of Research and Strategy at High Ground Public Affairs in Phoenix, Arizona. I have performed several surveys for the Litchfield Elementary School District over the past few years and have done quite a bit of statewide and regional and local research on public education, as well as a wide variety of other topics. I was asked to perform a district-wide survey earlier in April to ascertain the understanding of the likely general electorate in the 2022 November election cycle and give you a little idea of what's important to those voters, what challenges they might face, and what things have come up. So this survey was conducted April 19th through the 24th of this year. It's a 400 district-wide sample. The margin of error is plus or minus 4.9 for those data nerds at home that are interested in things like that. One of the things that we look at demographically, and it's important to note, is that 2022 will have much higher turnout than we experienced last year in 2021. 2021 is an off-cycle election. It is a significantly lower turnout than we see in other elections. That is following 2020, which was the second highest in state history. In the statewide electorate in 2020, it was about 79.9%. We saw turnout much lower than that in 2021. We anticipate turnout will be somewhere between 60 and 65% statewide. So we balanced our demographics for this survey based on what 2022 looks like. So we balanced it across age, party, gender, and region to best reflect what we anticipate the electorate to look like going into the 2022 election. We asked a few warm-up questions. We talked about education. In general, do you think public education in the United States is headed in the right direction or wrong direction? This is a very accurate reflection of a significant downward shift in the perception of public education in the last year or so. We've seen this happen across the country. It is a statewide reflection as well. We are seeing about 68% of the likely electorate think that education's headed in the wrong direction compared to about 15% total right. You can see regionally there's a little bit more optimism in Avondale and in Goodyear, a little bit more pessimism in Buckeye, Glendale, and Litchfield Park. We can see when you ask about the local schools, it does a little bit better, 24% approximately total right compared to 55% total wrong. This is the first time in this district that we have seen the total wrong direction go above 50%. It is one of the things that we've seen in most of the conservative-leaning districts in the suburb areas throughout Maricopa County. It is not unique to Litchfield School District alone. It is a fairly common occurrence that we are seeing right now, perpetuated by some of the national news that we see about the topic, but also local challenges as well that have impacted people's perception of the direction of education. What is interesting is when I ask about public schools, we have this 24% total right direction. But later when we talk about the quality of the education that we see within the Litchfield Elementary School District, the overall quality is and perception of quality of Litchfield is up significantly. So while you can have negative perceptions of the overarching concept that is public education, one of the really unique things about Litchfield is that your electorate believe them to be award-winning. The highest responses that we actually saw is the quality of the district, and the overall ranking when we do the scale on that is up as well. So those are two things to bear in mind as we go through this data. One other thing that's important to note, because I know as a board and members in this audience, I'm sure you're all aware that we have been open up for public instruction for the entire year. And if you haven't figured this out by now, I do have 3 children in the school district, 1 that is an alumni and 2 that still are in Litchfield schools. And I know personally that you've been open for public instruction this entire time. But what it comes down to is when you ask likely voters, and these are people who will show up next year, only 85% can affirmatively say they know schools will be open. This is higher than a lot of the districts we've tested throughout the state, where it's typically in the 75% range. About a quarter of the electorate doesn't know if schools are open or not. But what that speaks to is there's a challenge, and if you look particularly, there is a slight lower amount in the 65 and older when you look at age groups, are folks who are the least likely to have children under the age of 18 at home. And bear in mind, only about a third or so of our likely voters have kids within the school district right now, or kids under the age of 18, so that means kids anywhere. In fact, it's 31% of the respondents here. So what we're seeing is about 15% just don't know, or and we have 2% or so that are incorrect. It just means that we got to continually remind people that we are, in fact, open for business, that students are getting in-person instruction, but it also speaks to the national dialogue in places that perhaps are not open, leaking into a perception about schools that's not necessarily accurate. And again, these are well-educated voters who are likely to show up in our election. About 15% don't know that our schools are open right now. How much have you seen, read, or heard about the Litchfield Elementary School District? You can see that awareness is at about 54%, with about a quarter or so of the electorate saying they know a lot about the district. So everybody who said they knew a lot or a little, all 215 of them, we took their verbatim responses, recorded what specifically have you seen, read, or heard about the district, and then we've categorized these down into general categories that give us an understanding of what is top of mind. The reason we do this is to catch things that maybe we wouldn't hear other ways. If we do this in other communities and other areas, we find out things that maybe are top of mind that maybe aren't being brought up. I worked in a community once that graffiti was a big thing that they didn't even know that their voters were very concerned about. So we do that in this sort of setting here to get an idea of what maybe is top of mind, so we know and catch things maybe we don't ask about otherwise. One of the things that I mentioned is more than twice any other audience generally had a positive response about the district. It is a good district. They offer excellent education. They offer quality education, several A+ mentions and other things like that. 46 mentions of that. 27 mentions that I'm a current or former parent. I've had I've had children in the district. I'm very much directly aware of the district and things that have gone on within the schools. I will say 21 specific mentions of the governing board and actions of the governing board, behavior of the governing board, or activities at governing board meetings. That is also with general notions of conflict or media coverage regarding the governing board. That is up very significantly over last year when we did the poll last year. That's much more mentions of a governing board in this district than we have seen in other places. That is something I think it is important to be mindful of. In addition to that, we had 19 issues with sensitive or controversial curriculum or subjects being taught in the school. That's up from 14 mentions a year ago. So it's about even, 19 specific mentions of some sort of curriculum or topic that is of controversy, but that's up from 14 from the last survey we did. 18 mentions of the teacher pay concerns or shortage, or the overall teacher shortage. And then you have 9 awareness from the communications from the district, 7 mentions, which is up significantly about growth and construction, things being done at the schools or changes happening at the schools themselves. 5 general mentions, 5 people did know specifically that schools were open, so hey, that's good. COVID related, and then 4 specifically that were generally negative. So you can see there's a wide variety of things, but there's a lot more positive general responses regarding the district, and a lot of people who are more intimately aware of the district. That's a pretty high number, both of those, compared to what we see throughout the rest of the state and the region when we look at those types of responses. So as I mentioned, when we asked them, how would you rate the overall quality, job performance in offering education to students in our community? And if you look at excellent as a 5, very good as a 4, okay as a 3, poor as a 2, and failing as a 1, you can see the mean score. So like an average, like if it were 5 stars, is about 3.5. It trends towards very good. The overall electorate believes that the quality of education Litchfield provides is very good. This is much higher than what we see generally in a lot of school districts. They're generally around the 3.2 to 3.3 range. So it's 0.2 of a point higher, which means our excellent to very good ratio is quite good. One of the things that you can note is, especially in that 40 to 49 category, nearly half of our respondents believe that the education's excellent or very good. Those likely to have kids in our district, much higher than the ones who would tell us that they have kids. More than half, 51.6% of the respondents of those with kids at home believe that the quality of the education is excellent or very good. You can see the 2 challenge areas, obviously, that we have, which wouldn't be a surprise with having 2 very large retirement communities in here, is that our 65 and older, who don't have the direct contact with the district on a regular basis, have a 40% perception of excellent, very good. 29% in the 65 and older, and those without kids at home are at about 32%, excellent or very good. So we do those sorts of questions at the outset to get an understanding and let folks know that we're talking about education. And then what we do is a pretest. And so the replication here is, our goal is to reflect what the ballot language would look like if you were to move forward with placing a potential override on the ballot, and reflect the yes and no language that you would expect to see. This gives us an understanding of where the electorate is starting, and it's a snapshot in time. What we like to see is these issues start in the 60% range and end in the mid 50% range. And that leads us to believe that there's viability to put something on the topic and to put something on the ballot, and it has a likelihood of passage. Now, in this case, what we see is that it starts with a 60% starting range. So it's right at that threshold of what we like these issues to see. And I'm not here saying that I believe that the issue will pass with 60% of the vote, but what we do see is that it meets that likelihood of passage. It meets a threshold of support we see from the community, and it has across the board support, across the age group supports, as well as those with both kids and no kids at home. I will point out that there is a lower amount of those in that 65 and older range. If you look at that 54%, it trends down there. It also trends at 58%, and that's where the swing demographics are. Those are the similar audiences that we've seen in the past, depending on what we're seeing in the national and local news. Tend to change their mind a little bit because they are less involved in the direct operation of the district, and that's where the differences and the challenges lie. That the support in both those 2 categories are a little bit lower than the overall. What I like to see is sort of consistent across the board support on these types of ranges. But we look at the definitely yes compared to the definitely no. We have a 34% definitely yes compared to a 19% definitely no. We like those to be about as close to 2 to 1 as we can see. That shows a strong amount of support in stratified layers of people that are likely to support this. The next thing we did is tested the various number of override programs to see if there's things that stood out. Part of the reason that we do that is just to get an understanding of what is most important to your electorate. Has that changed over time? But also, are there things that stick out in that 65 and older category that they would like to know more about or have concerns about? And you can see all of the various override programs that we tested, and these were all randomized and rotated, which means some folks got teacher pay first, other folks got coaches and student advisors first. And what we found is all of these on that scale of 1 to 5 score very well. All of them score above that 3.5 range. In fact, most of them scored above 4. But you can see there is some differences here of where the priorities lie. If you're going to make a number 1 priority among the electorate, the number 1 priority is recruiting and retaining effective teachers. Number 2 priority would be nurses at every school. Number 3 is teacher and staff pay. PE is 4. That's sort of the top tier. Those would be the top 4 items that really meet the highest regard and the strongest amount of support. That's not to say that the other 3 items, band, music, and art, athletic programs, and coaches, are not supported. They are, in fact, supported. It just comes down to a question of intensity. And so one of the things that we look at is this is even just the order in which the people value these items. This can be the order in which you talk about them. If you're going to mention two things to the electorate, depending on how you communicate these items, this is the things that you'll find that are being most important. I know we talked earlier about growth, and you're going to see in a minute here, when we talk about growth, growth is a major driving factor for your electorate. It is up over the last 3 or 4 years. Voters have become much more acutely aware of growth and its impact on local education and other items like transportation. What we're seeing is growth is very much part of this, and recognizing that with growth comes the need to attract and retain more teachers. It becomes a scarcity issue. We're seeing this in other districts as well. Districts and voters in those districts recognize that they have to compete for every quality teacher within the region because there's simply not enough. And if you have to compete to attract those, and knowing that teachers can go other places outside the district to earn more money, makes them even more likely to support these types of investments when they see it. So when we talk about this, half the folks got favor statements first and half the folks got opposition statements first. And the idea here is to what is driving the electorate? What's important to them? What are the things that are in their mind when they think about this? And so we've tested 3 statements on each side just to get an idea, because when we do this, when I do this type of poll and people say, oh, well, they're really thinking this, or oh, they're really thinking that. The best way we can do that is use these questions to get an understanding of what they're thinking about the topics and how that's driving their elections. And when we come to this, what we find is some very convincing reasons to support. One, the overall performance of the district. In addition to that 3.58 mean score on quality growth, what you can see is 49.5% strongly agree that Litchfield Elementary School District is an award-winning district celebrated for its quality education and academic performance. Voters believe that. In fact, you can see across all segments and age groups, they believe that as a statement to be true. They do, at a slightly lower degree, believe that schools are the heart of our community. And like a slightly more emotional approach or understanding sort of the role that schools play in our community. That one, training our future workforce and that type of notion still is impactful. It's still well above 4, just not quite as much as the award-winning district. But what we see is growth. As I mentioned, we're growing rapidly and we need to be able to keep up with it. And parents are choosing to move into our district for excellent schools. That is one of the things that we are seeing with these areas, especially with new voters who maybe don't have as much of a connection to the community. One of the things that they do recognize is that they moved to this area and moved into this community for the quality of the schools. And so 54%, you can see the intensity of the strong agreement is even higher on that notion. On the other side of the coin, what we've seen is the 3 things that we see often is we've done enough to support our schools. I voted no before, I'm going to vote no again, and conflict within the district. Of the 3 driving factors that we see here and that we tested, the only one that scores above the mean that should be of concern and consideration is that conflict and controversy will impact voters' decisions when they come to making their votes in November. 17.8% strongly agree. It's a much lower discussion when you put them all together here. If you look at, I have put all the statements together on one slide so you can see what this means here is the voters are driven by their reasons to support, not necessarily by their reasons to oppose in this case. The only one that rises above 3, which means it is slightly impactful, is conflict. So minimizing conflict and finding ways to communicate these needs to the voters would be critical and essential if you decided to move forward with placing an issue on the ballot. So after we've explored this topic and did the exploration here, we did a post-test because people changed their mind over the course of the survey, and what we're looking for is those undecided folks you saw at the beginning. It was 12 points. It's down to about 8.7 in this. What we see is at the end of this, it ends at 66.8%. So it actually goes up. And as I mentioned, what I like to see is my threshold 60% at the front and 50% mid-50s, because in general, what we find in these types of survey research is that the support tends to go down over the course of a survey because negativity tends to weigh down. I try to keep them even, and in this case, the evenness, it worked really well. What we also see is the definitely yes rose to 41.5% compared to the definitely no, which shrunk to 16%. So it's nearly 3-to-1 in the definitely yes to definitely no. We also saw an uptick in performance among all age segments, as well as the kids and no kids at home segments. This is a much stronger across the board support that we'd like to see in this environment among the electorate as we go through this, because 2022 is going to be a conservative leaning audience. It is a lower turnout year. Those are facts of the matter. So seeing this larger segments of age groups and all of those are very helpful indicators to go through this. Finally, we asked a question about if they were both at Agua Fria and a Litchfield. As you may know, as you probably know, 80% of Agua Fria's district is contained within the Litchfield district. So basically, 80% of Agua Fria voters would have 2 items potentially on the ballot or more, depending on what Agua Fria decided to do. So one of the things that we test is where do voters go if they were to have the option of both on the item. What we see here is that about 60% said they would likely vote support for both, and then about 8% Litchfield only and 2% Agua Fria only. So within our boundaries, what we would see is the likelihood of passage being the numbers, and this is basically borne out what we typically see in previous election results, is the numbers slightly perform better within the Litchfield district for Litchfield than the high school district. And that bears that out. But if both items were on the ballot, there's a likelihood of passage for both of those items. So last 2 points that we'd like to make is, as I mentioned, bear in mind that even with the highest of voter turnout, the electorate, only about 30% or so have kids at home. So there is a big portion of the audience that is not getting direct communications from the schools because they are not living it every day. They are getting it from third-party sources. They're getting it from cable news. They might be getting it from the local paper, but they're not seeing the notes sent home every day. They're not seeing the regular communication. So as much as we communicate and continue to talk to the audience, there's always more that we need to do, especially with 15% who don't even know that our schools are open or aren't sure. And with that, our audience skews slightly conservative. I don't think that's going to be a surprise to anyone as well with that. And so with that, I am happy to turn it over and answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Benz. That was very informative. I will open up the floor for any questions from board members.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, actually more than a couple. When, exactly when were the pre-test and the post-test, the pre and the post interviews done?
Through the course of the same survey. So we did the survey over from the 19th to the 24th, but if I called you on the 19th, it was about a 10-minute long survey, and at the beginning of the survey, I ask you your yes or no question, and then still on the same phone call, at the end of the survey, I ask you if your opinion has changed and ask you the yes or no again.
So same phone call?
Yes, sir.
And same question, so obviously it's the same question.
Yes, sir.
It's the only way you can do a pre and a post. You can't compare if it's not the same.
Correct.
Okay, the question also I have on slide 10. Slide 10. Where does this compare to a year ago? Did you do the survey a year ago?
I did, in fact, do the survey a year ago. Thank you.
I figured you
asking.
did. Yeah.
So the survey a year ago was a slightly different audience, as I mentioned at the outset, but the pre-test a year ago was 63.8%. So it was a little higher a year ago. Our post-test a year ago was slightly lower, though. It was 65.6%.
Okay. Now, if we can look at slide 13. From what I gather, looking at these, ranking the overall programs, it looks identical to what it was a year ago or last November. Does it look about the same?
It's very close. The numbers might be slightly different, but the order is almost identical.
Can you help us to understand why it looks like the percentage favorable has gone up compared to a year ago? Same issues, well, not a year ago, this past November, same issues
Sure.
that we brought forward. And why would the vote change if based on these, what impacts the voters out there? Obviously, this is what they ranked.
So one thing is that the electorate will be about double. We'll see almost twice as many voters vote. That means a lot more younger voters, as we see in this polling, are predisposed and more likely. They're at that 60% range. When you look at those, in fact, under 29 is 74%, 30 to 39 was 76%. So more younger voters. We have less partisan voters, more independent and unaffiliated voters would show up. In an off-cycle election, it's a much more narrow audience that shows up. So it is a difference in the demographics of who's voting. It also speaks to the environment. The environment now compared to what was on the news and what was being talked to very extensively in November of last year compared to now, what's on the national news that's driving this, it will make a difference. Polls are a snapshot in time. So right now, in April of this year, it certainly looks very favorable. We have a whole gubernatorial primary between now and then. We have a gubernatorial candidate rolling out a new education policy tomorrow. Depending on what is being said and reflected in those dialogues, certainly can impact this information. But in its default state, the Litchfield voters tend to support public education, tend to want to invest in their schools. Their minds can be changed and they can be motivated out of that, just like every electorate is. But the presidential election in November of 2019 was absolutely, in the state of Arizona, very different than it was in 2020. And we see that a lot of changed from 2020 to 2021. We are in a very cyclical environment right now that impacts some of these perceptions.
Okay, one last question. Did you look specifically to precincts? There's 3 precincts that went against the override, I think substantially. Did you look at those precincts and compare them to any interviews that you had the year before?
So we interviewed different voters. So I don't believe there's anybody that we interviewed last year and this year similar, because we set quotas based on age, party, and gender, but we don't call the same people over and over. What I do use is those precincts. One of the things about the 2021 election is those were consolidated so that it actually can be within 3 different precincts. So what happened in each one of those precincts is it had a significant chunk of the retirement community in it. And so one of the things that we do is we weight the 65 and older crowd pretty substantially. They make up 50 and older combined with 60 and older is about 62% of the respondents. So I feel confident that it's not a regional issue as much as an age issue that's impacted in this. And so I feel confident that we've reflected that in here.
Yeah, those precincts will not be consolidated this this election. So, okay.
Yeah, we can use, Dr. Downing, members of the board, we can use the regional qualifications and the age qualifications to triangulate on those voters and get an understanding of what they're thinking about. And they won't be consolidated this time, so we will be able to see in more intensity. I'll give you a great example. Tut Hill, which includes both Verrado and Victory in it, will still be one giant precinct. And so you even have to look within that, the vote behavior within that precinct. Another one is that when you separate Pebble Creek from Paseo Verde or from Palm Valley, Paseo Verde and Palm Valley have a long-standing history of supporting the override, whereas Pebble Creek is much closer and more intense at various levels. Those consolidations in 2021 makes it look like that whole section was red, but it's really a more narrow portion of it.
Okay, very good. That's all I have.
Board members Idema, do you have any questions for Mr. Bentz?
I do not have any questions because Dr. Dowling asked my questions about the difference from last year versus this year, so I'm good.
Excellent. Board member Honak, do you have any questions for Mr. Bentz? Hearing none, I will move on to board member Clymer. Do you have any questions for Mr. Bentz?
I don't have any questions, but Paul, thank you very much for a great presentation. I've seen these for years, and there's always something that surprises me in them at least at least once. So thank you for your efforts in putting this together. And fingers crossed we have a better outcome this time.
Agreed. Thank you, Mr. Benz, for the presentation. Again, very helpful and informative, and we will put that into our brains as one piece of the puzzle as we continue this meeting and go forward with the decision to potentially call for an override. Next on our agenda is item 3E, which is the general information related to a potential maintenance and operation 15% override election presentation. This will go into the tax impact on our local taxpayers. And this will be presented by Brian Lundberg.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Brian Lundberg with Stifel Nicholas. We're an investment bank that works with, has enjoyed working with your district for quite a number of years, as well as most of the school districts in the state. My goal here with the presentation is to give you a little warm-up as to district property taxes and focus in a little bit on the tax impact of the override. And so I'll pause just a second here just to get things loaded up. Looks good. And I'm in control here of the buttons. Thank you very much. Okay, appreciate that. So this topic can obviously get very technical really quick, so I'll try and keep the main points to a high level, but please stop me or at the end ask any questions that come to you. The first slide that we put together here is a 10-year history of the two different types of assessed values that are kept for the district. One of them being the unrestricted full cash assessed value, which is determined each year. Those would be the taller columns that you see there, and the reason for that is that the amount that the full cash value can change from one year to the next is unrestricted. This value used to be used for bond and override taxes before Prop 117, but in about 5 years ago, Prop 117 was passed and said that now for taxes, only the limited assessed value will be used. That's the shorter column that you see here. And one of the things that Prop 117 had is that existing property could not grow any more than 5% per year. However, if you look at this chart and you see from one year to the next for all properties into the district, you see growth to the tune of 10, 12%. The reason for that, even in the limited property value, is that that includes also the number of new properties that are added to the rolls that year. So if you had the same number of properties from one year to the next, the maximum it could grow. However, new properties are also added on to that. Over the last 10 years, your unrestricted full cash value has grown 11% on average, and the limited property value has grown about 7.85% on average. One interesting thing about this, if you look at the far right, which are the values that are going to be used for next year, you see the full cash value increasing to about 1.65 billion and the limited value increasing to 1.2 billion. That means that the unrestricted value is about 35% greater than the limited value. And so unless property values decline in the near future, even if growth stopped, over the next year or two, there's about 7 years almost of 5% maximum growth that is likely to happen with the net limited assessed value. And keep in mind, the net limited assessed value is the one that is used for taxes. On the second slide here, we have a history of property tax rates in the district. Tax rates in Arizona are expressed as $100. It's per each $100 of net limited assessed value. And so the district's property tax rate, the combined rate, has been just below $4 per $100 of net limited assessed value and has declined to about $3.50. So about a 50-cent drop in tax rate over the last 10 years. A lot of that drop relates to the primary tax rate, which is a component of the combined tax rate, which is mainly comprised of the qualifying tax rate established by formula in statute each year. It basically goes down equivalently to how much existing property values in the state have gone up each year. The other two components of your tax rate are the override and the bond tax rate, which administration has worked very hard to keep moderated, and you can see it's about even through all the historical years here, with a bump up slightly in the override when it was increased from 10% to 15%, but has since come down to about where it was back in fiscal 13. What this means, especially with the override, is that the assessed value growth has outpaced the growth in the district's budget. That's what leads to the tax rate declining. On slide 3 here, or 4, apologize, we have for each of these historical years a column for each of the type of property in the district, at least the major types, and the very tall orange columns are residential properties within the district, which which for fiscal 23 next year are going to comprise about 76% of the entire assessed value, whereas the blue columns represent the commercial properties, and that comprises about 18% of the district's assessed value. Another couple observations here is that albeit the residential portion has grown quite a bit as expected, even though the portion of commercial is a lot smaller, it has doubled over this historical period. So adding commercial property taxpayers would reduce what residential taxpayers would have otherwise paid, and that's been the case in the district. The following slide is basically the same thing, just shown in a pie chart over from one year to the next, and so you can see there's very small differences from last fiscal year or the current fiscal year to the following fiscal year, but just to show you the various types of property within the district. Okay, so moving on into the maintenance and operations override here. We have the table at the top that we'd like to just briefly go through. If you look at the fiscal year column on the far left, it goes into the future, starting with fiscal 19, the first year of the existing override, and going down goes into the future and shows the 7 years of that override. Note in the third column over the override percent that per statute, the 15% M&O override, which was approved in November 17 but first took effect in fiscal 19, would only remain at its full amount for 5 years, which includes also next fiscal year, fiscal 23, but then phased down in year 6 by 1/3 and in year 7 by 2/3. The amount of actual override is shown in the fourth column there, and the amount of the override for the next few fiscal years is projected. The current tax rate for the override, as we shown on the other tax rate history, is currently about 85 cents, but just based on the assessed value growth that we know from the county now and the projected override amount for next fiscal year, we expect the tax rate to fall to about 79 cents. And so continuing on that 1, 2, 3, fifth column, you could see that if there was no override approved, that the tax rate would come down equivalently with the phase down of the override. However, the middle block of this table shows the impact if a 15% M&O override were approved in this November 2022 election date. It would not take effect until fiscal 24, and the projected realistic tax rate that we have for that override would be about 78 cents, or another penny down from what we expect for this next year, because we're being very conservative about the assessed value growth that you see in the far right column at about 5%. We don't know what the growth in assessed value, we don't know much about it, is going to be for fiscal 24 and 25. So we wanted to give you a feel for what we project realistically, we think, being a little conservative, what the tax rate would look like. However, we need to point out a couple of things. This is going to look a little bit different on the following slide here when it goes into the voter pamphlet. And the main reason is looking at the top table there, we have what we project for the fiscal 24 override amount, which is when this override would take effect at about $10.05 million. However, statute doesn't allow us to use a projected fiscal 24 assessed value. They require us to use the fiscal 23 assessed value, so we're not getting to show the impact of what we really think it's going to be. And the impact on the projected tax rate on the top table there of about 82 cents, you'll see is about 3 cents higher than we anticipate it will really be. The second thing we wanted to show you is there'll be a table like the table on the bottom here, where statute requires you to estimate the impact on the average limited property value of homes in the district. You can see that number there on the top left is about $245,000. I think the first observation that a lot of folks have when they look at that, they say, okay, how could this be the average? I'm not sure I know of that many $245,000 homes in the district. Well, the simple answer is that this is a value that was determined by the assessor a couple of years ago. And so when they collected that data, it was more than 2 years ago. But also keep in mind that this is the limited value that's restricted by Prop 117 to grow no more than 5% per year. So we have a slide on the next page which will hopefully highlight what does that really reflect. But keep in mind that taxes are calculated on the limited property value and not the current market value of the property. So you'll see a table like this when it would come to the voter pamphlet, where the average household, based on the 82-cent tax rate, would pay about $201 in the first fiscal year. And then the statute requires us to show the impact of half that value and double that value, which you can see on the table here, but also the average locally assessed commercial property. We go ahead and put the last line on the very bottom of the impact on a $100,000 value home because we think it's a good reference point. If my house has a limited value of $300,000, then it's simply 3 times this tax impact of the $100,000 and so forth. Okay, so what does a $245,000 limited value property look like when it comes to current values? Well, you know, the assessor also keeps that full cash value, which is the unrestricted amount. And according to these 2 properties we have here, one on Dysart Road and one in Valverde Circle West, you could see the full cash or the limited property values of these that we found are not exactly, but they're very close to the $245,000 average the assessor gave us. But that the full cash values are about $370 in one case and $352,000 in the other case. However, when we start looking at the actual values of those properties, they start looking more like what you would expect. In fact, the Z estimate taken in the last couple of weeks for these properties was $573,000 and $667,000 respectively. So we point this out because this question is going to come up. It's come up in past years, but it's really exacerbated by the fact that real estate values have been run up a lot in the last couple of years. The assessor obtained these values more than a couple of years ago, and also people pay taxes on their limited value, not that unrestricted full cash value, which is a little close to market value. And so with that, that's a lot of information. I apologize if it was too fast or too much, but I would stop here and take a breath and see if you have any questions.
Yes, I have a question. Go back to slide 7.
Okay.
I think I missed something there. On the assessed evaluation is 81.8194 cents. Is that correct?
Correct.
But but you mentioned that it will be closer to 78 cents.
We believe so, sir. Yes.
Okay, but what's going to be on the pamphlet, and how do you explain the difference to the voters when I say, well, not really? They're going to say, yeah, right. Come on.
Right. Well, we simply wanted to point out that it's going to be different than our realistic assessment. And the reason that it's different is that the statute requires us to use an assessed value for fiscal 23 and an override amount projected for fiscal 24. I leave it honestly up to the district and other people talking about this to decide if they want to point out the difference. Your current tax rate currently for this fiscal year for the override is about 85 cents. Mm-hmm. So even if this is an artificially high value of 82 cents, I think we'll just have to decide if we think that's important. I'm looking to Ms. Qualls here to make sure I'm not deviating. But
yeah, the smaller is better. That's the way I always thought about taxes. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. That's all I had.
Any other board member questions so far?
I'm good. Thank you.
Excellent. Back to you, Mr. Lundberg.
Thank you. I think I'd turn it over to Ms. Qualls, if that's okay.
Okay. Executive Director Qualls, do you have anything to add on the tax presentation, or should we move on to the next agenda item?
Let's move on to the next agenda item.
Excellent. That's agenda item 3F, which is the maintenance and operation budget override. Executive Director Qualls, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning, and community members. So just a couple additional items and kind of also just wrapping up what our prior two presenters have mentioned. I am Wendy Qualls, the Executive Director of Finance. The override aligns with our strategic plan under the pillars for student success, people, and finance and resources. So what is an override? An override allows a district to ask their local voters to exceed their maintenance and operation budget for up to 15%. The monies are used for salaries, benefits, and programs. Our current override, as we've discussed, is 15%. The overrides are approved for a term of 7 years. Often districts will ask the voters in year 4 or 5 to continue the current override. If it is not continued, it will be decreased by 1/3 in year 6 and an additional 1/3 in year 7. So what will the funds be used for? Recruit and retain effective teachers and staff, maintain a nurse at each campus, maintain teacher and staff pay, maintain our music, band, art, physical education, and other special area programs, maintain our after-school athletic programs, and also to maintain our intervention programs. So our reading specialists, coaches, behavior coaches, student advisors, those are our intervention programs. So tonight we have had our presentations on polling and tax rate, and tonight we'll be considering to call for the election. If we call for an election on the June 14th meeting, you'll have the governing board argument to approve. So that is a statement that would go into the pamphlet for voters to review. Some additional timelines. August 10th, we'll have to post the special election notices. August 12th, the pro-con arguments are due by 5:15 to the county. The governing board statement is also due on the 12th of August. October 11th is the last day for voters to register. And then October 12th, the mail ballots would be sent to registered voters on the vote by mail list. The actual election date will be November 8th of 2022. So as Mr. Lundberg had discussed earlier, when we look at our override amounts, our tax rate in the current year is 84.95 cents. When we estimate the amount for next year, we anticipate it will go down to about 79 cents. And then in the voter pamphlet, you'll see an 81.94 cent tax. And as he mentioned, that is based on the 22-23 assessed value, but the override for the 23-24 year. So I did the same calculation he did, where we look at if the assessed value increased by 5% for 23-24, and you use that amount, the tax rate's closer to 78 cents. And if you look at the current year, actually going into the 22-23 year, our assessed value went up 12%. So it's likely that the increase in assessed value will be even higher than 5%. So the tax rate would be even lower than 78. But as he mentioned, by statute and law, we have to use the 22-23 assessed value and what we think the override will be in 23-24. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I have a question on slide 7. we just have to keep in mind, on October the 12th, when the vote by mail ballots go out, and the voters get their ballots October the 15th, 16th, 17th, they're probably going to mail in their ballots no later than probably October the 31st, 30th. So in essence, at about 85 to 88% mail-in voting in this state, the election is going to be over. So whatever the district needs to do, whatever they plan to do, they must keep that in mind when any strategies are thought out or planned out if the board decides to go with an override continuation.
Correct.
Well,
And-
Dr. Dowling, I would like to just interject there to say the district is not allowed to do anything. There is a separate organization that is the Political Action Committee that I've served on for many years, of course, outside of my governing board duties, that will work with both the Agua Fria district and the Litchfield district to ensure that we are following all of the rules, which state that the district cannot have any influence other than our fact statement in regards to the campaign for this override.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that. I knew that. I said any entity that would plan strategies outside of the governing board or the school district would hopefully take that in consideration. I did not imply that the district administration or the board would promote a yes or no vote on this, on that proposition if it comes to, if it's decided to come to a vote.
Thank you for the clarification. Do you have any other questions or comments, Dr. Dowling?
One more question on slide 8. The information, I guess it's a repeat of the question I had. Hopefully, the pamphlet would indicate what the estimated tax would be versus what we're required to report at the 82 cents. I mean, this whoever puts it together.
So I don't believe the current pamphlet has that information. If you would like me to ask council if we can add that, I'd be happy to do that. That would be in the action item.
Okay.
I agree with Dr. Dowling of wanting to show less number. We always want to make it look like they're paying less because we have to contend with people who don't want to pay any more taxes than they have to. I do feel like we have to be careful, though, in having too many different numbers around, because then they're going to have people telling us we're lying because one thing says this and another thing says that. And so the fact that it is less now than it was before or currently, I think helps in our favor. But I do want us to be careful not to have too many numbers floating around. That's just kind of in our conversations we're having with people. When the committee that pushes the override goes out and talks to the community, then they can talk that up and tell people this is what we're thinking. But part of the problem is the way we have to do things on ballots that gets us into trouble. So.
Thank you. Board Member Clymer, do you have any questions or comments on this presentation?
No, I do not. Thank you, Wendy, for the information.
You're welcome.
Board Member Honak?
No, thank you. I do not either.
Excellent. Then we will revisit the entire conversation, including all three presentations at agenda item 7C, where we will continue to discuss and potentially call for the override. Thank you, Executive Director Qualls. We will now move on to agenda item 4, which is community opportunity for comment. Since I am unable to be at the meeting in person this evening, I have asked Director Hornback to call the speakers to the podium at the appropriate time. I will read the disclaimer for the acknowledgement of public request to speak. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, this agenda item provides an open call to the public, allowing individuals to address the governing board on any issue within the jurisdiction of the board. Items not listed on the agenda may be brought to the governing board's attention under this section of the agenda. Due to the Arizona open meeting law, the governing board cannot discuss or take any action on items not listed on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and no more than 30 minutes will be devoted to the public comment portion of the agenda. When you approach the podium, please state your name for the record.
Thank you, President Moran. Tonight we have 2 speakers. The first is Michael Finnegan. The second speaker is Cynthia Schwartz.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Finnegan. Last board meeting, the topic of site councils was raised. I'd like to revisit that tonight. I've reviewed the 16 campus site council meeting minutes, and they appear to have many discrepancies and are not complying with the scope and mandate of Arizona Revised Statute 15-351. Some have comprehensive good effort and information, and many have non-existent information and non-compliance with ARS 15-351. For example, members and titles are not listed at the meetings, minutes are not taken, voting is not recorded, parents are lacking in some cases, and there are many other instances. This raises a red flag that they are not in compliance with the stated Arizona Revised Statute 15-351 guidelines. The majority of the site councils seem to be focused on the tax credit dollars. How about proposal development for iReady Math and ESSER 3 programs that are coming down the pike? What guidance or training have principals been given to establish effective site councils and conduct productive meetings? Who has oversight responsibility of the 16 site councils to ensure they're complying with the Arizona Revised Statute guidelines? An audit needs to be taken to verify that site councils are in compliance and on track with their required responsibilities. Ineffective meetings lead to ineffective results and disheartened members. Proposal development needs to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely to be effective. ARS 15-351 states that, and the word shall means it's mandatory. Each school shall establish a school council, all have except for white tanks. The school council shall take into consideration the ethnic composition of the local community, whatever that means. The council shall consist of the following members: 3 teachers, 3 parents who are not employees of the school district, 2 community members, and 1 principal. The members shall adopt written guidelines that specify the number of council members and methods for their selection. Thereafter, representatives shall be selected in the manner determined. There must be an equal number of teachers and parents. They shall constitute a majority. The principal will serve as the chairperson unless another person is elected. Thank you. Thank you.
Cynthia Schwartz, and I want to talk about HB 2161 and non-academic programs in LESD. There's been an increase of social emotional learning programs across the country. But these programs have been along for decades, but they're trending towards promoting political agendas, including anti-racist theories. Some programs are trying to make students social justice warriors. Others are driving students to view schools as safe and not trust their parents. The first thing on your DEI presentation is to increase social emotional skills in our students, and also you have mentioned conscious discipline insofar as achieving academic excellence. Remember that HB 2161 is giving parents the right to sue any government person, including board members, or entity that interferes or usurps the parental rights of upbringing, education, health care, and mental health of their child. So my question is the district comfortable, and have you done enough research on the SEL programs in the district? Conscious Discipline now is promoting Ibram X. Kendi's books on their website, and Dr. Bailey has published a statement on BLM and calls for social justice. There's false advertising. SEL programs say that they'll raise academic achievement. You should read the Harvard University research paper that was issued in July of 2021 that does a comparison of 33 SEL programs and mentions conscious discipline. There's nowhere in this study that mentions any academic achievement. And on a very serious note, SEL, in my opinion, is pushing staff members to fulfill roles that are traditionally held by mental health experts who have spent years studying and training to become certified in the field of psychology. There are 13 programs approved by the governing board as character education / SEL, and Kagan now offers an SEL module. There are 3 reading programs in this district that list on your website that it promotes SEL or has that component. So the question is, where is the roadmap? Where is the strategy for SEL programs in this district? You cannot measure these programs, and there is nowhere that anything has been published about being able to evaluate it. You also need to read the Pioneer Institute paper, a 43-page paper that was published on SEL. It says, the hottest topic in public education is SEL. As student scores paint a gloomy picture of students' accomplishments in reading and mathematics, the decision...
Thank you, Mr. Finnegan and Ms. Schwartz, for your comments. We will now move on to agenda item 5A, which is the motion to approve consent agenda items as presented. Would any board members like to pull any items from the consent agenda this evening? Dr. Dowling?
I know everybody's disappointed, but I don't have anything.
I'm not disappointed at all. Board members Idema.
I have nothing to pull.
Board member Clymer.
I have nothing to pull either.
Board member Honak.
I don't have any either.
And I do not have any either, but I would like to make a couple of comments before we approve the consent agenda. I would like to say on consent agenda item 6K, which is the certified personnel employment position change, that I reviewed the resumes of our new hire certified staff, and I'm very impressed with the variety of education and experience represented. I look forward to welcoming all of our new teachers in July. I also want to note that in this agenda item, in this piece that's part of the consent agenda, the other board members may have noticed that 11 out of the 44 certified teachers and staff that we have included in this item, which is 25%, are requesting salary exceptions, which for me just goes to show that our placement charts are broken. We've already noted that in previous meetings. We are revisiting that in the upcoming school year, but I just wanted to point that out, that not only for incoming teachers, but also for some of our district employees, those placement charts really need to be revamped. And so I'm glad that we are doing that, and that is on our items to do. That is it for my comment on the consent agenda. Any other comments from board members? And if not, I will entertain a motion to approve.
I motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I will second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Since 3 out of the 5 of our members are not present this evening, I am going to do a roll call vote for all action items. I will do that in alphabetical order. Board Member Clymer.
Yay.
Board Member Dowling.
Is it me? Yes.
Board Member Honak.
Abstain.
Board Member Zaidama.
Yay.
I am Board Member Moran, and I also vote yay. Motion carries. Next on our agenda is item 7A, approval of additional supplemental curriculum resources, Math 180, Touch Math, and Lions Quest for special education teachers. This will be presented by Amber Mager, and it says Dr. Pearson here, but I don't believe that is who's presenting. I will defer to the folks in person there.
All right, it is both us. So
Okay,
good
great.
evening, Madam President and members of the Governing Board. Tonight I come to you with a request for approval of supplemental curriculum for our special education resource classrooms and specialized programs. We're excited to have the opportunity through grant funding and at little cost to the district to provide these necessary and teacher-requested student learning resources. The 3 programs are as follows. First, Math 180. This research-based math intervention program is a critical resource for our teachers, allowing them to instruct multiple levels and providing middle school students who are performing well below grade level with specially designed instruction to close skill gaps. Second, Touch Math, a multi-sensory math program that is primarily used with our elementary students in our specialized programs, starting with concrete manipulatives that provide a visual and tactile representation of the value for each numeral and moving into written representational content, all of which will provide a stronger understanding for future abstract mathematical concepts. And last, Lions Quest, an evidence-based learning program based on the 5 SEL core competencies from CASEL: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making, focusing on teaching critical social skills specific to each grade level from preschool through 8th grade and tied to identified IEP goals. You have the memo request, and I am here to answer any additional questions that you might have tonight.
I will open the floor for any board member questions.
This is Danielle Clymer. I didn't see any financial impact, actual numbers. I see that it's grant funded. I didn't see any actual numbers. Do you have anything that you can share with us on that?
So the only cost to the district, because it is funded with the ESSER grant and the ARP grant, would be the initial Math 180 training, which is half-a-day training that would be provided over the summer prior to contract time. And it would be 25 teachers. 10 of them are going to be new teachers, and 15 of them are going to be returning teachers that are in our middle school specialized programs and resource. And so the cost would just be for the stipends to pay them. So the training is paid from the grant, but then the stipends would be the only thing for those 25 teachers.
Great, thank you for the information.
Of course.
I have a question. The teachers have requested supplemental curriculum and support in math as well as social emotional learning. Which one of these three programs includes the social emotional learning?
So Lion's Quest is the social emotional learning. And so what that does is it provides specialized lessons for our teachers, and that one is preschool through 8th grade. And it gives them specific lessons that they can provide to their students to teach those specific social skills.
That would be a one-on-one type of situation?
No, it can be whole group or small group. It can be one-on-one also. It just depends on how the teachers are providing that instruction.
In Lion's Quest, is this being used in the district currently?
This one, it's not been used previously, so this would be in our resource classrooms and our specialized programs.
How did you find it?
So when we looked at our ESSER grant and what was offered there, because our teachers were asking about social emotional, like different learning specific to explicitly teach those skills, it was one of the few SEL curriculums that were on the ESSER list of approved. Yes.
No.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments regarding this item? If not, I will entertain a motion.
A motion to approve.
I will second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board Member Clymer,
Yay.
Dr. Dowling,
Aye.
Board Member Honak,
Yes.
Board Member Zeidema,
Yay.
and I will also vote yay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 7B, approval of Digital Learning Academy closure. This will be presented by Executive Director DeCoste.
Good evening, President Moran and members of the board. You have my memo on the recommendation for the closure of the Digital Learning Academy with all of the details that we have. But I just want to say before we discuss this any further that our teachers and our principal and her administrative staff at the Digital Learning Academy did an amazing job for really the last 2 years, not just the last year that we were officially a school, creating a school family and educating our students while they were at home. It's not for lack of effort and that the school has to close. It's just a shifting dynamic in what people are looking for, being home for so long. We have many of our families that are ready to go back to brick and mortar and in-person learning. And so it's just not fiscally feasible to staff and to be able to manage a school.
I agree, Executive Director DeCoste. A piece of me is sad to see this part go because I know we were hopeful that it would fill a need for families not only in our district but outside of our district. But to your point, I think people are ready to go back to brick and mortar since COVID is hopefully going to the wayside, and it is obviously fiscally prudent for us to make sure that we are utilizing all of our dollars as best as possible. And clearly, when we look at the numbers, it just doesn't add up for us to be able to keep this open. So I am sad, and I do appreciate all the hard work and the trailblazing, literally, that the folks at the DLA did for us. Do any other board members have comments or questions on this item?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to thank the staff that ran this school exceptionally well over the last 2 years. I am also sad to see it go too, because I did think it could potentially be something, but I agree, everybody is ready to go back to school and be in person, and I don't think the way we were doing Digital Learning Academy works for people that want online now. It worked when we were in COVID, but not necessarily for what people are looking for online going forward, if that's what they're looking for education. But thank you very much to those staff that put their hearts and souls into making that school be successful over the last 2 years. And we got to do what we have to do financially, but I'm still just proud of the work that they did, and I'm glad that we were able to do that for our students for the last 2 years.
I agree with those comments, and it was very valiant that a need was filled successfully. So that's to everyone's credit.
I'd like to just make a quick comment, if I could, not only to the school staff at the DLA, but also the district staff and the staff from all of our schools that gave of their teachers and administrators and shared their resources to make this happen. As Ms. DeCoe said, this happened long before it was an actual school. They were working on this for many, many months, trying to give our students and families more and more options. So kudos to not only our DLA staff and students and families, but also to all the district staff across the district and all of our schools that worked really hard to create this innovative approach that we'd never done before. And to see that we can do hard things during hard times in a really impressive way, makes me really proud as a board member. And I think everyone involved should be proud as well.
Well said. With that, I will move to approve the closure of the Digital Learning Academy.
I will second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board Member Clymer.
Yay.
Dr. Dowling.
Yes.
Board Member Honak.
Yes.
Board Member Zaidama.
Yay.
And I am Board Member Moran. I also vote yay. Motion carries. Next up on our agenda is item 7C, consideration and possible adoption of an M&O override continuation. This will be presented by Executive Director Qualls.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, and Superintendent Gunning. So you have the presentations earlier summed up the override. You do also in this agenda item have the sample ballot. Just wondering if you have any questions.
I have a question. We had a discussion this last week, Wendy and I. And if the board were to approve a 15% override, in previous years, the district has had 10% overrides. And the current, be continuation of the current 15%, if that's the wishes of the board. Is there any way, if we get more money per student, can we reduce the 15%?
So yes, what we're asking the voters for approval is for up to 15%. Okay. So we could ask for a lower amount. Not ask for, but we could budget for and levy a lower amount.
Is that something you think might happen or not?
It's very hard to predict that. Not knowing yet what the budget will be for next year. We probably won't know till late June what that would be. So that would be a discussion once we know what the state budget is.
And that would be prior to the election?
Yes, we would have that in June. We'd have our proposed budget for June for next year. So actually, you'd be looking at the year after that. So we could have the meeting in July and update the pamphlet and the information prior to that.
Okay, but we need to approve a 15% or a 10% at this point in order to fit the timeline to get everything done.
So to get the process started, we would need approval for the override tonight. And then if we do receive additional funding from the state and the board wanted to reduce that amount, then we would have to have an additional meeting to reduce that. Because what you're doing tonight is giving superintendent and myself the authorization to continue with the 15% override and the wording in the pamphlet. I'm pretty confident that if I went back and reduced that amount, the attorney would want to have board approval of that, if there's any major changes to the pamphlet.
Okay, my question is, tonight, we have to put a percentage in there.
Correct.
Okay, all right, that's the only question.
I have a comment I'd like to make. Our options tonight are to name a percentage. So our options are 10%, which is what we had years ago, or 15%. When we raised to 15%, the voters supported us, and we made a concerted commitment to allocate the entire additional 5% to teacher salaries. And we have followed through on that. It is listed on every teacher's paycheck, the specific amount that they receive. That is the full allocation of that 5%. I am not in favor of lowering to 10% at this point in time, because I am not in favor of cutting teacher pay. And I don't see how we could lower to 10% without doing that. So I am in favor of sticking with 15% at this point in time. But I am certainly open to hear any other board member suggestions or discussion on this item. This is an important matter, so I will go through and just ensure if anyone has any questions. Board Member Zeidema, do you have any questions or comments?
My only comments would be I would not be in favor of dropping it down to 10% either. The overwhelming community feedback we get, even though it was disheartening that we lost last year, but the overwhelming feedback we get is how important our teachers are, how great our teachers are, and how much we want to give our teachers every penny that we can. And that was the big thing that got it to pass for us when we initially went up to 15%. So I think that we need to continue with that because we need to make sure that we are paying our teacher every penny we can. I would hate to see us go back and look at cuts for our teachers in a year or two.
Thank you, Board Member Zeidema. Board Member Clymer, do you have any comments or questions?
No questions, just a comment, I guess. I agree with Dr. Dowling's desire to be as fiscally responsible and conservative as we can with taxpayer dollars, especially when we're asking for an override and a budget increase. I know we have been successful at the 15% before. We would not be asking for an increase in that percentage this time just to maintain the same. But I do understand that desire to be as fiscally responsible as we can. With that being said, I am in full support at this point in time of proceeding with the 15% in order to not only maintain our commitment and our promise to teachers to try to provide them as much supplemental income as we can to their typical base salary. But also, I think, to give the district a chance to really not have to look at what those cuts might be by losing 5% in the next cycle. I think that, again, we don't know, as Wendy mentioned, we don't know what the overall budget's going to be next year, but it's highly unlikely that it's going to be, going to give us the ability to make up that difference without making some significant cuts. So at this point in time, I'm also in favor of keeping it the 15%.
Thank you, Board Member Clymer. Board Member Honak, do you have any questions or comments?
Not really. It seems like that maybe I do have a question. Is there a balance between whether the override is 10 or 15% and the probability of it passing?
I'm not sure who would be more qualified to answer that, if that would be Executive Director Qualls or Mr. Bentz, if he's still around.
Or if it's just a guess. I mean, is anybody guess? I would,
Yeah. Mr. Bentz has left. Superintendent Gunning, do you have any thoughts on that? Yeah, so that was not in the poll, so we don't have any information to provide on that.
Okay, no, I understand. I mean, it would be kind of speculation anyway, just curious. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Dowling, do you have anything further to add?
When we vote, I just wanted to ensure that what we had talked about, if we get increased funding, that we do consider, if this is approved for 15%, consider dropping it to, like you had said a few minutes ago, to reduce that 15 to 13, or if we have that capability for the funding from the state.
And we can look at that once we have our final information from the state.
Okay? No, I'm nothing further. I'm ready to vote.
Okay, thank you. Then I will entertain a motion.
I motion that we approve a 15% maintenance and operation budget override.
I will second. Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board Member Clymer.
Yay.
Dr. Dowling.
Yes.
Board Member Honak.
Abstain.
Board Member Zeidema.
Yay.
And I am Board Member Moran. I will vote yay as well. Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is item 7D, pre-approval for summer stipends for May, June, and July 2022. This item will be presented by Director Sanders.
Madam President, members of the board, administration seeks approval of item 7D. This item covers all of our summer stipends that occur from after May 20th through July. All of the stipends are detailed in the agenda item, and the pay rates as well as costs, total costs. If there are any questions, I'm happy to try to answer those questions. Otherwise, we seek approval of these stipends as presented.
I don't have any questions, but I would like to make a comment. First of all, pre-approval is always very much appreciated by this board. Second of all, sometimes the word stipend gets a bad name for itself, but in this case, these are some very important programs that need to continue on over the summer, and I am more than happy to support these items. Are there any other board member questions or comments? Hearing none, I will move to approve the pre-approval for summer stipends for May, June, and July 2022 as presented.
Second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board Member Clymer.
Yay.
Dr. Dowling.
Yes.
Board Member Honak.
Yes.
Board Member Zeidema.
Yay.
And I am Board Member Moran, and I will also vote yay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item 7E, approval of new position and job description for district literacy coach. This will be presented by Executive Director DeCoste.
Good evening. You have the memo and supporting details of the district literacy coach position. And I'd like to let you know that we've talked about before how at district office we operate very lean, and our curriculum department has been no different in the past. We feel like balancing that department out now that we have a district math coach and a district PD coach, and now if we could add a literacy coach to help oversee the reading specialists and the reading data and PLCs across the district, that would be very beneficial to a very small department that services 17 schools and over 500 certified staff.
Are there any board member questions or comments on this new position?
Yes, I have one question. In the job qualifications, I'm getting to it. Under experience, on the job description itself, page 2,
Okay.
has teaching experience preferred. Why would that be preferred instead of required if they're going to be it's my understanding that they supervise.
It should be required, actually. That's probably a mistake from, I don't know, a typo. They go back and forth between myself and HR, and I may have sent it to them like that, so we can fix that.
Now I feel better. I lost
Yes.
sleep over that.
Thank you. I'm sorry. You look well rested.
And then one more thing. The next category down, bullet number 2, experience in coordinating, facilitating in-service training preferred. Boy, I sure like to have that required to show some skill in that area, because it sounds like that's what they're going to be doing.
Well, yes, they will be doing that, and most likely someone would have that, but if we had someone that was really good that didn't have a ton of experience with that, we do have people that could coach and help them strengthen that skill.
And also, one more thing, just a minor detail, I guess, is that there was an org chart attached.
Yes, that was in the administrative
in which
section.
the position's on there, but it hasn't been approved by the board.
Right, that's why it's only in the administrative section. It's not for public view. That was for you guys to see the big picture.
Okay, but it doesn't say draft on it.
Okay.
I don't want to get into anything that it looks like it was done, dead deal before it was approved by the board.
Well, it was strictly drafted for your information for this presentation and only shared with governing board members,
Okay.
so it's definitely a draft.
All right, I feel better.
Thank you for pointing that out, Dr. Dowling. I do think that the word draft can be very important. So the administration can look into that going forward. Any other board member questions or comments on the literacy coach position?
Yes, I had one question. This is Danielle Clymer. As we're talking about the org chart, I realize it's just big picture. Thank you very much for including that, because that was one of my questions, is sort of how did they fit into the overall mix? So I appreciate you giving us that visual. My one question for you is really the same probably with the district math coach and the PD coach. So underneath each one of these things would be the instructional coaches, math specialists, reading specialists at each campus. What is the evaluation protocol? Are those people evaluated by this person specifically? Are they evaluated by their campus principal? How does that process work?
They are evaluated by their campus principal in collaboration with the coach, with the district coach. They give a little bit of feedback, but the principal is there to see the day-to-day interaction with students and teachers.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If there are no other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the new position and job description of district literacy coach.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board Member Clymer,
Yay.
Dr. Dowling,
Yes.
Board Member Honak,
Yay.
Board Member Zeidema,
Yay.
and I am Board Member Moran, and I will also vote yay. Motion carries. Next up is agenda item 7F, which is approval of new position and job description for project manager. This is also presented by Executive Director DeCoste.
It's actually presented by Director Cruz.
Thank you, Director Cruz. Please proceed.
So I'm asking for a project manager to help us with all the new software, to work between the vendors and the departments so that we can get this onboarded as quickly as we can. It's kind of a long overdue position for us, so I'll entertain any questions.
I have a question. Who's responsible for these things now that's in the job description?
We divide it between myself and the network engineer.
Okay. I noticed on the actual job description, under educational requirements, Is this something that would require an associate's degree in computer science, in some kind of beyond just a actual certification of some sort?
Well, it's actually more of a position that just requires attention to detail and great communication skills.
So this person just coordinates projects?
We coordinate projects and updates with current software systems and stuff like that with vendors when we would move from one web filter to a different one. He would test it out and vet it for us. So, like I said, he'd be in charge of many assets or facets.
And they're responsible for hardware and software troubleshooting. It sounds like they're a technician also.
Well, in order to actually onboard new stuff, any filter, any any firewall, stuff like that, they got to know how it works. In order to onboard it, they got to be able to answer those technical questions when a vendor asks what systems we have, what switches we have, what our speeds are, stuff like that.
It seems like a nice to have job,
So,
but I'm not so sure that right now, when we haven't got we're talking about passing an override, talking about things that directly impact our classrooms, academic achievement and things like that. There's certain things that we may have to consider putting off until we see if the override passes.
so just keep in mind, you know, my department's been pretty lean throughout all these years, and we just went one-to-one. We brought on 7,000 more devices. So, and it's part of the one-to-one rollout.
If
So
I
this
could
position
comment,
was listed in when we approved the one-to-one, this was one of the things that was listed in it already, correctly? So
Yes, it
we've
was.
already kind of approved this tentatively before. Right, and I would specifically say that this, because we're doing one-to-one, and probably just because my husband's an IT director for a law firm, so I hear about technical stuff all the time, we've asked more and more of our technology department, especially in the last 2 years with COVID and everything they've had to do. We've thrown more programs at them, more devices at them. I know that they are working round the clock practically in not just in our schools. So I think this does directly help our kids because it's going to help get these devices out to them faster, and it's going to make sure that everybody's got what they need and everything's working properly. So I think it's a good addition.
I agree. I think it's needed. I didn't notice how much this position costs, but and the other thing is that a lot of IT people don't have college degrees because a lot of people learn stuff self-taught right now, and what you learn in schools is pretty much often outdated. So it sounds like how much does this position cost?
Say again?
How much is it? What's the salary for this position?
Well, in the agenda if you look on board docs, under item 7F, there is the salary chart information, and it goes from 0 to 2 years of experience at $58,000 up to 6 years of experience at $60,356 with a cap of $92,882. I would imagine we'll find someone right in that high 50 range to start.
Correct.
Yeah, I see that now.
Any other board member questions or comments on this item? If not, I will move to approve the new position and job description of project manager.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board Member Clymer.
Yay.
Dr. Dowling.
Yes.
Board Member Honak.
Yay.
Board Member Zeidema.
Yay.
I am Board Member Moran. I also vote yay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item 7G, approval of new position and job description, communications specialist. This will be presented by Director Hornback.
Thank you, President Moran, members of the Governing Board. This evening, we bring forward a recommendation to approve a new position called the Communications Specialist. You've been provided the job description. I'm available to answer any questions. We are seeking approval as presented.
Director Hornback, will you just give us some history as to how this position came about and the need for that and kind of the evolution of this department in the past couple years?
Thank you. Yes, I've been serving in the role as Director of Community Relations for the past 6 years. That was essentially a new position. And that services, of course, every school and department within our school district, in addition to several responsibilities in the community, such as supporting our elected officials, serving as a liaison to the foundation, cultivating business partnerships, and supporting our parent organizations. The scope and responsibility of this cabinet level position is quite broad, and the expansion of the Community Relations Department will help us meet the needs of our growing community. An advantage to growing the Community Relations Department includes the opportunity for more targeted marketing, which of course will very likely attract new students to our district, which is always a goal to help us achieve our budget goals.
Excellent. And another piece I believe that this is going to help us to do is to have better communication with our parents and community in utilizing social media and things like that, correct? That's one of the things that's listed here.
Yes, absolutely. This position will work heavily on the website and in social media. Of course, we know that communications across our district with all of our stakeholders is a high priority at all times, and we need some more help to achieve the strongest communication possible with all of our stakeholders.
Excellent. Do any board members have any questions or comments on this item?
This is Danielle Clymer. I don't have any questions. I just want to say I am absolutely 100% in favor of this position. I have been for a while. I have been advocating not only Shelley Hornback, but Superintendent Gunning and anyone who would listen that, you know, Director Hornback being a party of one is a tough job. Being in community relations and communications and marketing in public schools right now is a hard job. And I think, you know, the job has been done to the best that we could possibly do it. And I think that adding another layer and another opportunity to take a little bit off that plate so the director can focus on certain issues and the specialist can focus on certain issues is just going to create even more communications across our district, which I think everybody really wants. So I am excited to see this finally come to fruition and looking forward to see who we're able to, you know, get for this job.
Excellent. Any other board member questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the new position and job description of communication specialist.
I will second. Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board member Clymer.
Yay.
Dr. Dowling.
I abstain.
Board member Honak.
Yay.
Board member Zaidama.
Yay.
I am board member Moran. I also vote yay. Motion carries.
Thank you for your support.
Next up on our agenda is item 7H, contracted services with Educational Services, Inc., also known as ESI. This will be presented by Director Sanders.
Madam President, members of the board, since 2011, the Litchfield Elementary District has been participating in the Retire Rehire program offered through Educational Services Inc., ESI. The Retire Rehire program allows retirement-eligible employees to retire through the Arizona State Retirement System and return to work under the ESI staffing lease agreement. We have two teachers that would like to return under that agreement. They are Cynthia Huffman, Scott Libby Elementary School, 4th grade teacher, and Phyllis Lucier, Educational Services District Instructional Coach for Educational Technology and STEAM. The summary includes many details surrounding this recommendation. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. If there are no questions, we recommend that you approve the item as presented.
Do any board members have questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, I will move to approve the contracted services ESI for the 2022-2023 school year as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board Member Clymer.
Yay.
Dr. Dowling.
Yes.
Board Member Honak.
Yes.
Board Member Zaidama.
Yay.
I am Board Member Moran. I also vote yay. Motion carries. Next up on the agenda is item 6I, administrative contract renewals with salary exception for 2022-2023, also presented by Director Sanders.
Madam President, members of the board, this is a document or item that we bring forward each year. This is our 2022-23 administrative contract renewal recommendations with one salary exception. And district administration seeks approval of the item as presented.
Do any board members have questions on this item?
What is the exception is with Nathan White?
Yes, that is correct.
And why is that different? Well, I mean, why is that an exception?
Mr. White requested a further review of all of the years of experience that he had. And after further reviewing that and verifying years of experience, in your administrative section of your documentation, you're able to see the details surrounding that, as well as the salary that's being presented for recommendation.
Thank you, I understand.
Thank you.
Hearing no other questions or comments, I will move to approve the administrative contract renewals with salary exception for 2022-2023 as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board Member Clymer.
Yay.
Dr. Dowling.
Yes.
Board Member Honak.
Yes.
Board Member Zaidama.
Yay.
And I am Board Member Moran. I vote yay as well. Motion carries. Next on our agenda
President
is,
Moran, can
yes.
I request that we take a 2-minute break?
Yes,
please?
you certainly may.
Thank you.
We will now take a 2-minute break and we'll return in 2 minutes. Thank you. Are all board members present and accounted for?
Danielle Clymer is here.
Jeremy Honak is here.
Excellent. Let's reconvene the meeting. Next on our agenda is item 7J, which is approval of fiscal year 2022 expenditure budget revised number 3, which will be presented by Executive Director Qualls.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning. So our presentation aligns with our strategic plan under finances and resources to increase our stakeholder knowledge and understanding of school finance. Timeline completion, we are required by Arizona Revised Statute to adjust and revise our budget by May 15th. The maintenance and operation budget is based on our student counts, base support level, and daily mileage. Our average daily membership since our second revision has decreased by about 62 students. However, once the weights are adjusted to our ADM, we've actually increased by 60 students for funding. The funding level is consistent at $4,445.53 per student, and our daily route miles are 2,099, and that's unchanged. When calculating the general budget limit, the general revenue control limit has increased by 192,000. The maintenance and operation override has increased by 78,000. We are increasing or proposing to increase the transfer of funding for K-3 to capital because we need some additional materials. So that would be a decrease to the M&O fund of $33,538. And then recently we went through an ADM audit and the settlement was $65,000, and we are taking that adjustment in 1 year. So the budget for the 22 year would be decreased by the $65,000. So in total, the change is an increase in $172,587. When we look at the different programs within maintenance and operations, the regular education budget increases by $215,000, and the K-3 reading decreasing by $42,216. When we look at the percentage of the budget that is in salary and benefit, it's 81.4%. That's a 2% or 0.2% decrease. Utilities stays consistent at 4.2%, and other goes up by it goes up to 14.4, which is the increase of 0.2. So that is made up of positions that are now contracted, so moving the budget from salary and benefits down to contracted services. So my estimate for the classroom spending out of the M&O fund is 58.5%. The unrestricted capital is based on prior year ADM, and so there is no change in the average daily membership for calculating the budget. However, Proposition 123, our allocation has decreased by 27,000, and that is based on a statewide recalculation done by the ADE, or Arizona Department of Education. And here you see the other side of the transfer of funds from M&O to capital for our K reading program. So the net increase in our capital funds is $6,679. When we're looking at categories, we are decreasing furniture and equipment by $650,000 and increasing textbooks, library books, instructional materials by $656,000. Other funds, increasing our federal funds by about $922,000. Our English language learner grant is increased by $169,000. Food services by $1.7 million. Gifts and donations by $475,000, and indirect costs by $500,000. Do we have any questions?
Executive Director Qualls, could you just tell me more about the changes between our second revision and the current revision for the other funds, the slide that we're looking at right now?
Okay. So with that federal funds, we have received some additional funding through ARP grants. So another 922,000. The English language learner is a state grant, and that one had increased. Food service, the funding level has changed just a little bit from when we originally did the budget, since they allowed all students to eat for free. So we are being reimbursed at a higher reimbursement rate than normal. So we did increase their budget by 1.7 million. The gifts and donation is an increase in developer contributions for the new homes going in. And then indirect costs, just additional indirect costs we'll be able to take this year.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Do any other board members have questions or comments on the budget revision? Hearing none, I will move to approve the expenditure budget revised number 3 as presented.
I'll second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board Member Clymer,
Yay.
Dr. Dowling,
Yes.
Board Member Honak,
Oh, boy, yikes. Either abstain or yay. I guess yay.
Board Member Zaidama,
Yay.
and I'm Board Member Moran. I vote yay as well. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is item 7K, approval of fiscal year 2023 placement chart, which will be presented by Director Sanders.
Madam President, members of the board, this evening we bring forward an item that we bring each year for approval. There are 13 placement charts that require approval. The salary placement charts reflect the additional increases awarded to various employee groups at the April 12th governing board meeting, unless otherwise noted. The salary placement chart tables are used for new hire placements and current employee salary capping purposes. All of the charts have a standard update by updating the health insurance benefit employer contribution from $7,571.28 to $7,817.28. Another standard update that you'll see throughout all of the placement charts is updating the ASRS contribution from 12.41% to 12.17%. So I will go ahead and highlight the changes for all of the charts, and then at the end, if there are any questions related to any of the charts, we can definitely try to go through that. First chart is to approve assistant principal placement chart, which increased, the chart increased by 1% of the entry-level salary. The next chart is our certified placement chart, which increased by 2%. We also created a special salary table to illustrate all of the salary amounts that are included in certified staff pay to help our public and prospective teachers who are reviewing our charts on the web to fully understand what that total salary looks like for our teachers. We added the doctorate stipend that was approved on April 12th. So we increased the doctorate column certified pay by $1,000. And if we have an employee who acquires the doctorate, they'll receive a $1,000 stipend. And then that stipend amount does roll into their base salary the following school year when their contract is issued to them. Next chart is classified hourly placement chart. This chart charts entry level increased by $2.12. The amount 212 was calculated using the $15 minimum pay amount that the board requested on April 12th. Minus 1288 gives us a result of $2.12. Our transportation secretary, we are seeking to increase that placement chart by an additional 8 cents on top of the 212 in order to meet the $15 minimum pay. We also added a compliance monitor stipend of 70 cents per hour and a district media aid lead for $1 per hour. The classified salary chart, supervisor placement chart, increased by 4%. Within that chart is our office supervisors, and we are seeking an additional salary adjustment of $1,566.08, which is needed to ensure a minimum wage pay of $19 per hour or an entry salary of $33,440 on the chart. We wanted to ensure we stayed competitive with that position and used a baseline of $33,440 to adjust that chart to. The director, assistant director placement chart increased by 1%, and staff in those positions are noted with an asterisk to receive a $3,600 car allowance that was in place last year and in years prior. The deputy superintendent placement chart increased by 1%. This person would receive a $5,000 car allowance. And that was also approved when the deputy superintendent position recommendation was brought forward earlier this year. The executive director placement chart increased by 1%, and staff in those positions would receive a $5,000 car allowance, as in similar years. The extracurricular training and other stipends chart. I've listed all of the updates made to this chart in chart order. There are a lot of updates. These are basically stipends that occurred during this past year, and we just want to kind of help improve our operational efficiency by adding these to the chart versus having to submit them on a separate item to the board. A lot of times, since we only meet once a month, we just want to make sure that we have these pre-approved and ready to pay our staff so we don't further delay payment to our staff. Occupational physical therapist placement chart increased by 2%. Principal placement chart increased by 1%. Psychologist placement chart increased by 2%. Speech placement chart increased by 2%. Student advisor placement chart increased by 2%. And changes to the student advisor placement chart reflect similar to that of a teacher's chart. That's why you see many bullets under the student advisor chart. And the following chart adjustments, as I reviewed just a little bit ago, were not included in the budget approved on April 12th. However, they are included in the salary compression adjustment item or agenda item that I will be talking about after this item. So once again, school office supervisor, we need to adjust their salary chart by $1,566.08, adding that to the chart. And the transportation secretary, the adjustment of the 8 cents. And the classified hourly placement chart, using the $2.12 for that entire chart. This item impacts all of our new employees that are hired, and we seek approval of the placement charts as presented. And at this time, if you have any questions, I'm happy to entertain those.
I don't have any questions specifically on this information. Thank you for walking through it and having all of this right here listed this way. It was really easy to go through and to see what had been added and what had been changed. My question is more kind of on a large scale. I know, as President Moran mentioned earlier in the meeting, and we've been talking about over the last several months, the work that your team has been doing to sort of identify some of the gaps that we may have in the placement charts, and some of the different phases. I think we've only completed phase 1 so far, but can you just sort of remind me and anyone listening that we are going to approve this? This will be in effect for the entire next year. But in addition to that, there will be an additional look taken at each one of these placement charts as we move through the entire sort of human resources program to see where further adjustments need to be made. Can you just walk me through that, like in a 30-second version?
So, whatever changes we do make, we can definitely look at updating the charts. And then just once again, remembering that our charts are for new hire placements only. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Well, I just mean that, as we are continuing to work with, his name is escaping me right now, the consultant that we worked with earlier to identify some of the gaps that we had in pay as in relationship to other districts and other people around us, just to make sure that this is just sort of one step in the process to make sure that we are offering competitive salaries continually, and we will continue to move through that process over the next year, because I think we have 2 more phases of that coming up. So there may be additional, probably not in the next year, but in the following school year, there may be some additions to this as we move through that process. Is that a correct assumption?
It is, and the results of that compensation study included that doctorate stipend that we've increased, the doctorate column. It also recommended the simplification of the table that we've created and added to the chart. And keeping in mind that, as we all may remember, we are definitely competitive in our teacher salaries, so we're really up there. So now that that special table's been created and added to the chart, we think that'll show our public that we really do pay a lot higher than most of our surrounding districts and throughout the state.
Great, thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Director Sanders, for this is a lot of information. Obviously, you and your staff have been very busy getting all this updated since we approved the budget, and I'm very pleased to see those changes reflected here. Do any other board members have any questions or comments on the fiscal year 2023 placement charts? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve fiscal year 2023 placement charts as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board Member Clymer?
Yay.
Dr. Dowling?
Yes.
Board Member Honak?
Yay.
Board Member Zaidema?
Yay.
And I am Board Member Moran. I also vote yay. Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is item 7L, approval of classified hourly and office supervisors salary compression adjustments. Also presented by Director Sanders.
Madam President, members of the board, on April 12th, 2022, the governing board approved a minimum hourly rate of $15 per hour for classified hourly staff. Based on this adjustment made to the classified hourly placement chart, an additional increase is recommended for all current hourly staff to avoid salary compression. Salary compression occurs when a lower paying position on the placement chart is increased, but the next higher level paying position is not increased. This creates a compression effect. To address this compression, a salary compression adjustment increase for all current hourly staff and office supervisors for 22-23 is recommended. On our screen, the public can see that there is a table. We'll refer to that as Table A, Salary Compression Placement Chart Example. So this is what the chart would look like, or this is what this table represents, us increasing amounts. But as you can see in column 1, the 21-22 hourly rate of pay for these positions, there are differentials. And in the middle column, if we increase these rates by the amount shown by using either $2.12 or $1.97, which is all that's needed to increase $13.03 to $15, you'll see to the right that it basically takes these positions right to $15. This is not what we want to do, because if we did this, then we would lose those differentials with all of those positions, as you can see on the left, at least in this example, example A, Table A. In Table B, the placement chart, just to give you some background as to why we selected that $2.12 per hour amount, using that amount to increase the charts. As you can tell, using these same positions, if we increase these charts or these entry-level amounts by $2.12, we keep the differential pay, so we don't lose that differential. And as you can tell in the far right column, the new rate is 15 for an aide, 15.15 for a night custodian and $15.35 for an extended day site leader. In Table C, current hourly employee pay example. So this is where we can show you what it would have looked like if we had not applied that $2.12 per hour increase for our current employees. So here you can see, for example, an aide who is at $12.88 an hour. If they earn their 2% performance pay eval increase, as well as the 4% increase already approved for staff by the board, their amount goes up to $13.65 per hour. If we increased their amount just to get them to their $15 per hour, once again, we don't see the differentials, and now everyone is at $15 an hour, so we don't want to do this example. In Table D, which is the one we need for our employees to maintain that differential, so for this similar person or aide in this position who gets increased to $13.65 per hour, the calculation that we would use is taking that $2.12, we would minus the 4% increase that the board already approved for staff. They would still receive it, but we're just taking it out of the $2.12 per hour. So this gives this person $1.60 more per hour, and it takes them to $15.25 per hour when you add their new hourly rate of $13.65, which includes their 2% eval increase, their 4% eval increase, plus the $1.60 that you can see, getting them to a salary of $15.25. And once again, maintaining and keeping those differentials based on employee and based on all of the raises that they've received over time. Other special adjustments that are needed, this was kind of covered in the placement charts for the transportation secretary position. We do need to give that person an additional 8 cents to match what we did to the chart. And office supervisors, we want to ensure that minimum pay salary of $33,440. So we would also offer an adjustment to our office supervisors. So the impact, as you can tell, when you take all of our classified hourly cost as well as those office supervisors, and you take into account their current wages, their 2% max eval increase, their 4% additional increase, and market adjustments for select positions that have already been board approved, that cost is $19,256,823. So what we're seeking is approval of additional salary compression adjustment increases for all of our hourly staff, just as we saw that in Table D. And this would ensure that $15 minimum pay and would avoid salary compression and maintain those differentials that exist right now, as well as the transportation secretaries I covered and office managers, giving them an additional salary adjustment of $552, and this additional cost comes out to a total of $1,460,297. Once again, all of our current staff are impacted by this recommendation, and if approved, our classified hourly staff will receive a notice of appointment wage agreement to include the additional salary compression adjustment and increase in their 2022-2023 new hourly rate of pay. When HR gives this information out to all of our staff, we do provide them a cover memo that shows them the math, explains to them where they were and what their new rate is. So they do see that to help reduce those questions from them, and so they can actually see that that's how we calculated their new rate of pay. So in conclusion, we seek approval of this item as shown in Table B and D as presented.
Director Sanders, I have a question. I want to follow you. I'm just having a hard time following Table D. So if I'm looking at just the aide in this example, because the aide is the lowest paid person, at least on this table. So if we're going from $12.88, I understand all the math, but what I don't understand is on the right, on the new rate, they'll be making $15.25. If our goal was to get the lowest person on the placement charts to $15, shouldn't that be $15? And I don't understand why we're increasing that to $15.25. I don't understand why we're doing the math. I understand what math you're doing, but I don't understand why we're doing that to get to something over $15 when the person at the bottom should be at 15.
So you would want to look at table C, because that's the example that would show what you just described, getting the employee to $15 per hour. You'll notice that if we did that, their adjustment varies. And I mean, it varies anyway on column D, but the notice that the amount is different, and then the end result is $15 per hour. So if you have an employee who's at $13.65, whose new rate is $13.65, and you only increase their amount by $1.35, yes, we know you're going to get 15. But remember, like night custodians, their differential is higher, or they're a higher paying position. So now you've lost that differential if you pay your night custodians just to get them to $15.
I'm only talking about the aide. I understand the idea of compression for the custodian, the extended day site leader, and everyone that would be above that. No questions there. My question is on the aide. If they started out at $12.88, our goal was to get them to 15. Our goal was to get the bottom person to 15. And it seems like we did that, but now we're at 15.25. So we're actually starting them higher than our minimum. So I'm just wondering why the aide at the bottom would be at 15.25 when the goal of all of this was to start to have sort of this minimum, which is now $12.88, to be 15. I don't understand why the minimum is now 15.25.
Because you have to take into account the raise that they were approved for. So you have to include their 2%, their 4%, and then just getting them to the 15 essentially places them right back on the chart. And you have to remember, we don't place current employees on the chart. The chart is for new hires only. So I think one way to look at it is once an employee is hired, they are initially placed on the chart, but after that, they're no longer, their salary should no longer reflect the chart. And so this is just a way for us to show their increases, and using that formula of $2.12 minus their 4% was the best way that we could come up with to ensure that the differentials across all of our classified hourly staff, existed and stayed in place. Otherwise, if we just take all of those employees who are under $15 an hour and just place them right at 15, now you have higher paying level positions, slightly higher paying level positions, all receiving the same rate of pay. And I don't think that was the
No, I don't. I understand what you're saying, but I don't have any issue with the other folks earning more. I guess what you're saying, or what I'm hearing you say, I think, is if an aide, let's say an aide has been working with us for 2 or 3 years, you don't want them starting at $15 an hour with someone that's going to be hired tomorrow, placed on the chart at the exact same spot, that you want them to have that increase already. So they're already starting above the minimum, is what I'm kind of hearing you say.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure that I completely agree with that, in the sense that the compression I understand, and making sure that everyone's making the appropriate amount as the ladder goes up. Totally agree with that. I'm just having a hard time. We're including a very significant pay increase to get to $15 an hour. So I don't know. I'm struggling with that part a little bit, but I'll let other board members chime in.
Do any other board members have questions or comments on this item? My question would be to Executive Director Qualls. How does this budget amount for the compression adjustment compare with the amount that we discussed when we approved the budget?
So when we approved the projected budget, between the 4% and the compression adjustment, we had about $1,080,000 in for maintenance and operations. And so on Monica's memo, she has $993,000 for the cost of maintenance and operations.
Okay, thank you.
Hi,
Board Member Honak, go ahead.
yeah, Jeremy Honak. So what we're potentially approving now, looking at the final, the end of the chart, are we approving the 1,460,000, which is the additional for the compression adjustment, or are we also approving the 19 million? That was something else, right?
I'm sorry, Board Member Hornak. I don't know if I quite heard that. I kind of heard, I thought I heard, what are we approving? So one point of clarity I want to add is, I did cover Table B, the placement chart example. So the board has already approved the salary placement charts, and so that was part of the classified hourly placement chart approval. So that one is pretty much, that one is done. So related to this item, we are seeking approval to pay current hourly employees an additional increase to satisfy that $15 minimum without loss in salary differentials. Keeping in mind, we've had many positions that have had some market adjustments. I believe we brought to the board in December some market adjustments to the board. We don't want to lose those market adjustments.
Yeah, no. So I get it. So in other words, what we're doing here, we're just voting on the compression adjustment. That's I understand it.
Correct. This item will be seeking approval for the additional cost to give all our classified hourly staff a compression salary adjustment, as well as the transportation secretary an 8 cents more adjustment, and office supervisors a special adjustment of $552.
So the total financial impact that we're voting on is the 1,460,000, correct?
Correct, and out of M&O, an estimated $993,000. Of that amount, M&O is $993,000.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this item? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I motion to approve for the approval of classified hourly and office supervisor salary compression adjustment increases for 22-23 school year as presented.
I will second. Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board Member Clymer.
Yay.
Dr. Dowling.
Yes.
Board Member Honak.
Yay.
Board Member Zinema.
Yay.
And I am Board Member Moran. I also vote yay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item 7M, Governing Board Retreat Planning, which is presented by me. In the past, our governing board has had a retreat. We had a full day session, and I would like to propose that we have 2 half-day sessions. There's a document attached here that would cover what I believe to be the high-level topics that we would need to discuss from an agenda standpoint. I would propose that one of the dates be held in June, and that be primarily a planning session. Where have we been? Where are we now? Where are we going? And in July, I propose we would have a goal-setting session that would be half-day. In July, we'll have the academic data to be able to review, and we could do goal setting for academics as well as for the superintendent goals for the upcoming school year. I will open the floor to any questions, comments, or suggestions.
Jeremy Honak, How does this fit in with the open meeting law? I mean, I don't quite understand the retreat. Is this just board members going and exchanging, being presented information and discussing it, or how does that all work?
Yeah, so it would be posted publicly, like all of our meetings, and there would be an agenda, and members of the public are welcome to attend. We could also you do a YouTube like we do now. I don't have all those details, but we could end up with an executive session at one or both, depending on, sometimes there are some items that we might need to have an executive session over the summer, so that might kind of get squeezed in there as well. But nope, totally open to the public. It would be considered an open meeting, as are all of our discussions.
Thank you.
Any other questions or suggestions?
This is Danielle Clymer. I like the idea of having 2 half days, excuse me, versus the full day. If we had the option, I think breaking it up and giving us a chance to kind of dig into 2 different things in both June and July might be a better use of our time and, be able to get more accomplished. So I'm in favor of what you've presented here.
Okay, great. Can I just get confirmation that all of the board members have provided Ms. Potapoff with their availability based on the Google form that she emailed? Dr. Dowling.
That was a while back. Is that correct?
Yeah, within the last month, I would say.
Okay, I'm a 95% yes. I believe I have done that.
Okay, if you have not yet done that, Ms. Potapoff, could you please email a reminder to anyone who maybe has not done that? We cannot actually decide on a date today because I'm not sure who said what date would work best for them. However, I will work with the administration and we will let everyone know which dates are best for everyone as soon as possible.
Since we're talking about it, those dates in July, I cannot do either one unless they are later in the day.
We could certainly do a half day, but later in the day, I would be happy to work around that. Please let Ms. Potapoff know your availability. Board members, Idema. Okay, on my agenda, it says we need a motion and a second here. Is this motion and second approving the retreat itself, approving the agenda? I'm not sure what. I need some assistance from Ms. Potapoff, please.
What?
Okay, I don't think we need to actually approve anything. I think this really should have just been under the information discussion items because we will, like any other meeting, post the agenda, et cetera, follow all the protocols for that. Is that correct?
Correct. And then if there are any further changes or suggestions that come up, the board members can definitely email us and then we can share.
Okay, excellent. Then we will move on to agenda item 7N, which is the ASBA, Arizona School Boards Association political agenda for the 2023 legislative session. Also presented by me. As always, the ASBA works with our state legislators to suggest items that members of ASBA have voted on, the boards have voted on as their top priorities, and to prioritize those with the political agenda. I have a few suggestions. I have 6 suggestions based on the entire list that was provided. I will start with those and then I will get feedback from any other board members who might want to prioritize something, and we will collaborate on our top 5, which will be submitted to ASBA. I would suggest that we prioritize funding. Under the funding, there are two: maximizing funding to attract, recruit, and retain teachers, as well as revising the funding formula to reflect stability. Under improve outcomes, I support policy that supports teaching as a profession, as well as policy that promotes social and emotional wellness. And under accountability for taxpayers' dollars, I promote establishing transparency for all institutions. In addition, I could be persuaded to support, since we just approved an upcoming ballot measure, that local control, we would change the budget override ballot language to better reflect what we're asking the public to do. I will open the floor for discussion. Do any board members have additional items to propose or any that you would disagree with?
President Moran, I'm in agreement with the ones that were mentioned. Did you mention 6 or 5? Are we trying to narrow down those? And I know,
yeah, I mentioned 6. The local control, with changing the budget override ballot language, would be my lowest priority. I know you actually can submit more than 5, but I'm happy to narrow it down to 5.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
My 2 top ones were the maximize state funding for nationally and locally competitive salaries, as well as the change the override language, considering we're going out for one that I figured was important this year.
Thank you, Board Member Zaida. Board Member Honak, do you have any feedback on this item?
I just, there's so much I don't like with this. It's just, I got no comment.
Okay, Dr. Dowling?
Are you asking for my input or just on what you proposed?
I'm open for anything you'd like to say.
Well, I'd like to have reformed current year funding to a system that provides districts with adequate, stable annual budgeting ability and technical reliability. In other words, we shouldn't have to guess from year to year how much money we're going to get, or we can't have some kind of a formula to where we can appropriately project. That would be, it's in the middle on the front page under funding on the right side, about halfway down.
Okay.
Also, I would like to see fully restored 9th grade CTE/CTED eligibility and funding to allow to, in other words, let them have the ability to get money for 9th grade CTE students. Right now, they don't have that. And that's under improve outcomes for students. It's on
Okay.
the second page.
Okay, I understand that request. However, we are a K-8 district, so we should be advocating for our students. Not that our students don't go on to 9th grade, they obviously do.
But we're sending kids from the 8th grade to high school that should be getting CTE funding when they go to high school. So they are getting our kids. It does impact us indirectly. And the other one I had, I do not, in the last section, bullet number 2, I don't understand why they'd want to repeal the empowerment scholarship accounts. It doesn't make sense. They're confusing that with vouchers. It was intended for your SPED students to get services that they're not getting currently in the school district that they're at. It has nothing to do with vouchers. I don't know why they would oppose that. Totally.
I agree. I agree.
Totally. It shows you what the confusion is out there with the empowerment scholarship accounts. It was never intended for vouchers, but everybody's jumping on that as a way to get vouchers, and it's totally confusing. If they want vouchers, call it vouchers, but don't mislead people by calling it, tagging on to the empowerment scholarship accounts. That irritates me, and I guess that's what I have to say on that.
Okay, so Board Member Clymer, do you have any feedback?
I don't have any additional feedback. I mean, I don't have any additional to throw into the mix. I can support the majority of what was laid out here. I will say that I am not in support of, while I am in support personally of fully restoring the 9th grade CTE eligibility, Dr. Dowling, I agree with you 100%. I don't think that's the focus of Litchfield Elementary School District. I think it certainly does indirectly affect our students as they move on, but just with so few resources and so few things that we have, I think we need to advocate for the students in pre-K through 8 right now. So I would personally like to see us stay away from that and maybe, help our sister school district of Agua Fria advocate in a different way, but not through this mechanism.
Okay, so it sounds like from a funding standpoint, I would, suggest based on the feedback that we just got from the polling information that we prioritize bullet number 1, maximize state funding for nationally and locally competitive salaries to attract, recruit, and retain talented teachers and staff, etc. I think for funding otherwise, I could go either way with revise the school finance formula, or to Dr. Dowling's point, reform the current year funding to a system that provides stability. I believe that that's very important as well. So let's go with then the stability. So we're going to attract and retain teachers would be our number 1. Number 2, we can go with stability from a budget standpoint. Board Member Zaidama would like to see the ballot language for the override in the local control section, which I believe is important as well. There potentially as our 3rd. And then I didn't hear much from the improve outcomes, which is obviously something that we're all in favor of. Any specific feedback or any priorities on that section, improve outcomes for all students? Hearing none, then I will go ahead and suggest that we support the policy that recognizes, respects, and promotes teaching as a profession, again, based on the feedback that we received from the polling and our constituents. And then I would lastly propose that for our 5th item, we would include the establish financial and academic transparency for all institutions and individuals that accept public funds. I will make a motion as such.
I will second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. Board Member Clymer.
Yay.
Dr. Dowling.
Yes.
Board Member Honak.
Nay.
Board Member Zaidama.
Yay.
I am Board Member Moran. I also vote yay. Motion carries. We will now move on to agenda item 8A. Section 8 is our information and discussion agenda items. Item 8A is discussion of change to walk boundary from 2 miles currently to 1 mile and first reading of the revisions to policy EEAA, walkers and riders. This will be presented by Director White.
Actually, President Moran, this is going to be presented by Megan Duplain, Executive Director Duplain. Good evening, President Moran and governing board members. With pleasure, I'm coming tonight to let you to request that we discuss the change in our walk boundary back to 1 mile, which would be a first reading of the revisions to policy EEAA, walkers and riders.
Thank you, Executive Director Duplain. We have discussed this in a prior meeting. I believe the board is all in favor. We want to service as many students as we can with transportation to help our students and families get to school and be able to learn. Do any board members have any questions or comments on this proposed change?
My first comment, obviously, this makes me very happy. I hated the 2 miles thing, but do we have enough bus drivers? Like, do we feel confident that we're going to be able to keep this in place?
We, out of our 55 bus drivers, student transporters, we currently have 12 openings still, and 5 in training. So we are on our way, but we are continuously pursuing applicants right now. So we'd like to continuously talk to community members or anyone interested that we are still in need of student transporters, but Director White and I are confident enough to move forward with this request to revise the policy back to 1 mile.
I'd just like to make a quick comment, no question, to both Ms. Duplain, who's there, and Mr. White, who's not. It's been a tough year, and I know the board, from the moment that Director White got here, put pressure on him to change this back, and he has done everything he possibly can to fix that in just the span of 1 year. So thank you for continuing to push hard and to do what the board has pushed for, because as President Moran said, not only being able to service as many students as possible, but be able to support as many families as possible to help get their kids safely to school who have struggled over the last year or two. So thank you for your efforts. I know it's ongoing, but there's a lot of appreciation in this room tonight, I can tell.
Thank you. I will pass that along because I know Director White and his entire staff have been running on empty all year, doing so many jobs and just really doing the best they can for our children in light of their staffing shortage. So I will pass that on to them because they definitely need or deserve commended.
Any other board member questions or comments on this item? Thank you, Executive Director Duplain. We will now move on to agenda item 8B, the LESD E-rate update presented by Director Cruz.
Good evening, Madam President and board members. You have my report on our SEPA compliance. This is required for us to maintain our E-rate funding that we get every year that helps us pay for computers and equipment as well as our internet. So you have in front of you, if you got any questions, please feel free.
Honak here. What's the QMOE? What's that?
Chemo is the fiber that connects our schools.
Thank you.
It's kind of like a hub and spoke. So at our data center is the hub and the spokes are all of our sites.
Do you have to lease those fiber optic lines?
Yes, we do.
I'm good, thanks.
Any other board member questions or comments on this item? Thank you for the presentation, Director Cruz.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to agenda item 8C, Superintendent Goals Update, the results of the Parent Satisfaction Survey. This will be presented by Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, we would like to share the results from our parent satisfaction survey. So you'll see this is very similar in the format as we have shared before in the past with our employee satisfaction as well as student. It aligns directly to our strategic plan and provides a measurement tool on our progress. It's all about the continuous improvement. We go through the survey results, we rolled them out to gain input, and then design action items, and then analyze again in the next survey cycle. Survey results by percentage. We had 1,700 parents, a little over 1,700 parents participate so that you could see the average score under each item. The district's overall mean was 4.04, using a scale of 1 to 5, and about 43% of all the response choices were in the strongly agree. We did go up by a little bit from last year in both the top box as well as the overall score. When we look at that score, here is the gauge for us to be able to set a goal for next year. So next year we would want to increase these scores by 0.05. The highest scoring items, my family is treated with respect, the school is clean and well maintained, and my child's learning is a high priority at the school. The lowest items were school rules and discipline plans are consistently enforced at the school. Superintendent is an effective leader, and the superintendent makes decisions in the best interest of children and parents. So as the schools roll out these surveys and obtain feedback from their parents, then they'll share those feedback and action items with me that would directly relate to my section. A lot of times as well, the principals will also select the lowest scoring items in their arena so that they can directly design action plans that will affect their campus. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Superintendent Gunning, this is Danielle Clymer. Just one quick question. I know last year we had a significantly higher participation rate. Obviously, last year was a fairly crazy year for many different reasons. Do you think that that was probably the reason for the large increase? Because we seem to be back to still higher than where we were in the previous 2 years, but not nearly as high as last year. So what do you think? What do you think accounts for that?
We noticed that also in the employee engagement survey as well, and I think it was all due to being remote, and people are on their computers all the time, so it was very easy and readily available to do that. So I think that was probably where we saw the difference. I feel like getting back to that 1,700 is probably the more average, typical response that we see.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board member questions or comments on the parent survey information? All right, thank you for that presentation, Superintendent Gunning. We will move on to agenda item 8D, the Learning Recovery Update Grant Scorecard.
Madam President, members of the governing board, we would like to review our Learning Recovery Scorecard and update you. We wanted to let you know that we did not receive the set-aside grant. So we will have to be looking at some of those items that we had designed to place in that, which was, we did apply for that back in December, and we received the notification on April 18th that we did not receive that. So you may see some further adjustments and changes as we move into next year with ESSER 3 funding. Can you scroll up and down? Okay, sorry, I didn't realize I had control of this. So our scores, when we look at our benchmark scores, we're still waiting for our final benchmark scores to come in. Brian is working on putting all of those together. So by our next meeting, we'll have all of our district benchmark scores. So you'll have the end of the year because those are being wrapped up at this time. The governor's grant that we accepted and had approval back in the middle of December. You can see we have actually a lot of green that we're moving into. So in the middle school mental health resources, again, we were just kind of reviewing or going through some of those to see which ones might be necessary and needed, and looking at the current needs. But we've been doing a lot of in-house training and supports in that arena. The math curriculum's on schedule, Edgenuity we implemented. We will look at reducing some of the licenses for next year since we won't have as great of a need. So we will probably see some cost savings there, as well as the district math coach, which we approved the hire for that for the 22-23 school year, but we'll also be utilizing them in a stipend capacity to help support the implementation of our new curriculum. Math aid per school, we have those posted. We still have 14 positions open, and we are hoping that with the adjustments with the compensation that we'll be able to fill those positions quickly, so that we will be fully staffed for the 22-23 school year. District math specialists, we have 12 positions filled already, and we still continue to interview. We will analyze and review the data after the end of the year benchmarks to see if we need to make any adjustments with placements of those staff members. Special ed, they're going through the RFP process and looking at their ELA intervention programs. And so those were the Orton Gillingham research-based programs, so they're still reviewing those. ELL programs for development, we are in the middle of that process. We have some newcomer kits, that's a lot to say in 9 o'clock, our ongoing and Scholastic Action magazine subscription, and the end date for that would be June 2023. The book study, they will begin that in the 22-23 school year. The Lions Quest you approved this evening. Working on the manipulatives. So manipulatives will be purchased to support iReady, and that'll be a one-time purchase, and that'll be completed in July. After school tutoring, this includes stipends for the staff for tutoring. We began that in February of 2022, and we will be able to continue that service for our families and students through May of 2023. After school clubs, we were in the process of an RFP to look at different resources out there to help support our after school clubs, and or also provide stipends for teachers that may be able to offer some additional after school. Summer school, we were approved by the governor for the summer school camp program, which will provide over $700,000 for our summer school program. This is food services, transportation, and we have 5 sites. They're in the recruitment process right now, and then also working with the state to understand all of the compliance components with that program. Professional development for every school. We're working with Solutions Tree to provide professional development, mainly in the arena of math. For our campuses, we had some that participated in that this year, and the others are planning it to be scheduled in the 22-23 school year. The WeGrad ASU Parent Engagement, formerly known as the Dream Academy, we wrapped up the spring session, and we had 15 families which graduated. So that was a huge success, and we will be able to continue that program again next year. Mango Language subscriptions will start July 1 and will run through that fiscal year. Ready Rosie, same thing, purchase order issued, and that will run from July, will run our school year, so July through June. Our care rooms, schools have either received their supplies or are in the process of ordering them, and all purchases should be completed by the fall of 2022. Mental health professional development, we've been able to provide that in-house currently, but still will be looking for any additional needs for trauma responsiveness. And our student transporter incentive program, we were able to, of course, do that and provide actually increases, and all care room behavior techs were hired. So that is an update on our ESSER grant and learning recovery. And in addition to that, my hopes is to be able to also provide our ELL reclassification rates in the June timeframe too, so that you'll have reclassification and as well as benchmark growth and learning.
Great, thank you, Superintendent Gunning. I have one question on the grant that we did not receive, the governor's grant. So is the plan basically that we will then take, we'll like prioritize those items? For example, Illuminate, we were already, we've contracted for that. So for that, we'll move that into ESSER, into some other ESSER funds, or will some of these things then kind of fall off, like 1,000 laptops, or is that going to just fall off the list?
So what we'll have to do is on those priority components like Illuminate and like class-wise recommendations that we already brought to the board, and like transportation for after-school programs, those kind of things. What we'll do is look at those priorities and then see, are there still ESSER 3 funds available, since not all of the ESSER 3 funds were we able to fill those positions this year. So there may be some flexibility of, switching which grant it is in, and or is there other funds like M&O that we would utilize to purchase Illuminate.
Okay. I guess I would just,
I was
yeah,
just
I
gonna
guess,
say, Wendy will go through to analyze
Okay.
like where we are on our ESSER 3 grant funds, and then where we're sitting on our other components.
okay. And when would we expect kind of a revamp? Because I know you can change basically what was in the original ESSER proposal. So I guess just what's the time frame for when we think we're going to have kind of the revised based on what we know now?
She said we would most likely submit the updates and changes prior to the next board meeting, so we would be able to bring that back in the June board meeting to show where we made some adjustments.
Okay, that's fine. I don't have a rush on it. I just didn't know if we needed to wait until after this fiscal year closed, or kind of what that time frame was. Okay, thank you. Any other board members have questions or comments on the learning recovery update? Okay, then we can move on to agenda item 8E, DEI goals progress update, which will also be presented by Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, we'd like to provide an update in regards to our DEI goals. So our first goal is to increase the social-emotional skills of our students by committing to the advancement of social-emotional learning and effective behavioral supports to foster success in all students. One of the components in which we were looking at, especially in this year of the returning from a pandemic, was really focusing in on those skills for our students, so that we created the care rooms, added the behavior techs. So we wanted to be able to show the data and really track the data. So our behavior techs, as of May 5th, have provided direct behavioral support to approximately 250 students a month across the district. So that's anything from small lessons, could be break time, or it could be more extensive time as they're coming in and learning specific skills so that they can return to the classroom, as well as having those skills so they're not disrupting other students in the classroom. The other piece that we wanted to monitor was we wanted to see, especially in the time of returning, did we notice any disparities in attendance? So you can see that the previous attendance report was a little more detailed, and we thought it was easier just to summarize it for May. We still see some consistency with our attendance. So when you look at the grand total, you're going to look at the grand total for attendance, and then you want to compare that to the percentage of students within that subgroup. So if you're looking at American Indian, for example, they make up 0.83 of our population, and they make up about 1% of the absences. So across the board and every subgroup, we see pretty consistent numbers with our absences. So we're not seeing that any subgroup has a extreme absentee rate compared to their actual makeup or population of in our district. Then from there, we wanted to also monitor if all of our skill building and everything that we were doing in the classrooms, are we seeing an effect in regards to out-of-school suspensions? And also, are we monitoring that if we're seeing any greater disparity in relation to out-of-school suspensions? So you can see that we have made some growth and some gains in some of these areas. We still see a difference in Black and African students of the 12% out-of-school suspension compared to the makeup population of 7%, but that has definitely increased or improved. And we still also have a focus on our male students, because we notice that they make up 52% of our population, but they make up 77% of out-of-school suspensions. So really looking at what relationship building, skill building can we put into place to support our male students so they can be successful and remain in our classrooms. The next goal was to increase academic achievement by committing to the advancement of the current programming to foster the success of all students. So there we listed all of the trainings that we have done. We did slow down some of our trainings this year because we knew about teacher burnout, so we wanted to make sure that we were considerate and thoughtful in that process. But wanted to list all of the different supports that we had provided to help our teachers to be as successful in the classroom as possible. I will tell you, from being on campuses, we have done just recently 4 apple pie tours and 2 showcases, that our teachers are really excited about the summer trainings that are coming available, and they're very excited about the new math curriculum, as well as when we're seeing the campuses that have really taken off with Kagan, their excitement and their engagement level with their students. The next goal was to attract, recruit a robust and diverse pool of candidates, retain a diverse and talented and effective staff. So these were all of the different components that we added to our recruitment process. We'll be very excited to add even more as soon as we bring on our HR generalist in the summer, because that will be one of the responsibilities, is doing a lot of research and trying to find out different and more ways to recruit staff. We did make some headways, though, if you look at our data from by subgroups. So we have made some improvements, but still have a ways to go. And then the last one is review our current curriculum to ensure it is rigorous, relevant, and representative of our current student population. I didn't know what color to make it in between red and yellow. I guess I still could have made it yellow, because we did do that in the process of the math curriculum during that adoption process. But we'll be looking at our Wonders and Study Sync next year. And I would be more than happy to entertain any questions.
If there are no questions, then we will move on to our next agenda item. Thank you for putting this together, Superintendent Gunning. I look forward to, I know that these goals are a multi-year project, and it will take quite a while to achieve some of them, but hopefully we are making some headway and will continue to do so in the upcoming school year as well. Now we will move on to agenda item 9A, which is Superintendent Gunning's report.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the governing board. It was a very busy month. We had 4 apple pie tours. We had 2 school showcases. We had the district STEAM fair. We conducted the road show for all of our employees for their updates. We had lots of celebration, Westside Impact Teachers of the Year, as well as our Administrator of the Year, which we celebrated Amanda Acosta. And thank you, Dr. Dowling and Melissa Zeidema for attending that celebration. Principal Jenke with the Exemplary Principal Award, where we were honored to have Principal Jenke recognized by Superintendent Watson. Mayor Osborne was there, as well as President Moran, Board Member Dowling, and Board Member Zeidema. City of Goodyear, we want to thank them for celebrating our Teacher Appreciation Week, and thank you to Mayor Pizzillo and Chief Rodriguez and all of our SROs that came out to visit our schools and participate in a celebration and an assembly. Our Verado Heritage, they had a tailgate celebration, which it was a great time to attend. I think everyone is really excited to be able to get back to school functions. Had probably over 200 people there participating, and I want to thank Councilmember Clay Goodman and Chief Hall for being present at that. Mayor Schoaf, we were so excited to see him at our Wigwam Creek Career Fair. So we're very fortunate to have such engaged cities and council members. Avondale Councilmember Solorio is going to be working with our Rancho Santa Fe Kinder team to attend and participate in our Kinder promotion. We celebrated Admin Assistant Day. Thank you, Amy, for all that you do, and all of our admin assistants and office managers across our district. We also celebrated our principals, and tomorrow is, I think it's tomorrow, is Nurses Day. May 10th is Nurses Day. I'm not sure exactly what the day is. L. Thomas Heck was on the cover of the West Valley View, celebrating their outside classroom that we're working on, so we're very excited about that. Our district celebrated the month of the military child with Purple Up. Verado Middle School hosted a breakfast in celebration of that, and Roby Elementary participated in a door decorating contest where their doors were judged by 5 airmen from Luke Air Force Base, and there was not a dry eye, including all the airmen, because having little children, thank you for your service, is priceless. And I just want to take the opportunity to just thank Shelley Hornback for her dedication to our school district. She's been committed to our district, not only from a parent perspective and PTAs from years ago, to being on the governing board, then to being a very valued employee. She's our greatest cheerleader, and she will be missed.
Thank you, Superintendent Gunning. We will now move on to item 9B, which is reports from governing board members. I will stick with my roll call order this evening, and we will begin with Board Member Clymer.
Thank you. I will try to make this brief. I know we are getting long into the evening, but there's a few people I'd like to recognize, and so we'll go from there. First, I was able to attend the Education Foundation board meeting, as I am the liaison this year. They're working very hard on the upcoming Pride Awards and everything that goes with that. I know Shelley mentioned that earlier in the presentation, but that is tomorrow night, and I am so thankful and grateful for all the work that they've done in making this happen yet again this year. I was able to judge the district STEAM fair that was held at Mabel Paget this year. I know Shelley completely stole my thunder. I wrote my board report, and I think I'm going to mention everything that she said in her opening celebration. So I apologize for that. I wanted to say a big thank you to Mary Mahoney, who welcomed us and allowed us to take part in something that was not only fun and enjoyable, but a way for us to engage with students and teachers and other parents and community members. So thank you to that. She worked very hard, as did Laura Combs from our district, to make that happen. So thank you. Your work does not go unnoticed, and that district-wide initiative, I think, is only going to grow next year, which is exciting. I was able to attend the National Junior Honor Society induction at Western Sky Middle School, which, the best part about that not only was seeing students excel both academically and from a community perspective, but slowly but surely we are getting back to normal. and seeing our staff and our students and our families interact was really fun. So thank you for the invitation to that. I just want to say a big congrats to our students, teachers, and staff. We are almost there. We have almost wrapped up another year. It has been tough at times, a lot of times actually, but I'm very proud of everyone's hard work to finish out this year strong. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to say a personal congratulations to Jody on her National Certification Award. You've worked really hard. It's been a long 18 months for many reasons, but putting that on top of it is a call beyond. So thank you for stepping up and learning and growing and doing everything you can to be the best superintendent of this district. I sincerely appreciate it. I want to say also congratulations to Principal Janke and Principal Acosta for their principal awards. I'm really proud to serve a district who not only pursues academic excellence for our students, but professional excellence for our staff. So kudos to all of you and congratulations. And I will end with a heartfelt thank you to Mrs. Shelley Hornback for her dedication and hard work over the past 6 years as an employee, but the dozen before that as a parent, a PTO leader, a community leader, someone who works with our continued equality. There's too many things here to list. While you and I have worked together in some education capacity for probably more than a decade, it is your boundless enthusiasm for this district and its students and its employees that has most impressed me over the years. So I wish you the best of luck in your next chapter. And thank you, thank you, thank you for all that you've done. You will be sorely missed.
Thank you, Board Member Clymer. Dr. Dowling.
Another year almost down. We used to think, I remember back in the day when we'd sit there and the teachers, we'd have, a few of us would have lunch together, but we'd say, hey, don't look now, guys. We only got 47 days left. Then it was 30. Then it was down to 20. So we're getting there, and I'm excited about the end of the school year. I want to see how we do. I'm excited about this summer. I'm looking forward to next school year as we start up. And everybody who's tomorrow night will be going to the celebration for the retirees. I always look forward to those kind of things. They're kind of sad, but it's a new journey for those people. And for the celebrations for the Education Foundation after that. And it's just, and then next week I'll be going to the promotion at Tom Heck Middle School. I can say Tom Heck because I know this guy 40 years ago. Well, I'll tell you a story sometime when I have more time about some stories. But anyway, this is great, and I just look forward to the end of the school year and moving on, and these great programs we have with the great people that you have, that you've hired and brought into this school district. And I'll keep it short. And that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Dowling. Board Member Honak.
Hey, I think I'll just pass my time along this time and I'll get it next time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Board Member Zeidema.
The end of the year is my favorite time because it's when we get to celebrate all the exciting things that we have accomplished throughout the year. But it's still been really busy with random things that we've been going to. I was able to attend a school showcase at Palm Valley and at Wigwam Creek Middle School. And I have to say, for Palm Valley, those two kids that did the tour, I've loved all the children. I really do. It's been great. But I think they were my favorite. They were very knowledgeable about their campus and also just very honest about their feelings about things. And it was wonderful. I also attended the study session where we talked about site councils and boundary changes. As far as celebrations go, because we're moving into celebration time, I was able to attend the assembly for Mr. Janke, which was a very exciting thing. I was sad it didn't get to be a surprise for him, but I guess he didn't come in his Hawaii shirt, which I think would have been better, to be honest. But it was exciting to celebrate him getting Superintendent Watson's exemplary principal for 2022. I also was able to attend the parade that was a surprise for Mrs. Acosta, and it was amazing to see her and how much her students love her and her staff love her. They were all wanting to see her and cheer for her. They all had signs for her. They were all chanting, and I was pretty cool. It was good to see her, all the kids, everything. But then she walked up to her kids, and I started crying because it was just so emotional, and she was emotional, and it was a really amazing thing to see that. Barbara Roby has a place in my heart. It was where my oldest went to elementary school, so it was nice to see them being recognized and seeing Mrs. Acosta, who I've also known for a long time since she was at Scott Libby when my kids went there. So I also attended the STEAM Fair as a judge and then got to go to the event later the next day for the awards. It was an amazing event, and Mary Mahoney did an amazing job. I'm excited to see that grow and be bigger and better every year. I can't wait to see it. I was impressed with the amount of people she was able to get out and come be judges, and I really hope that all our schools come together and make that a really impactful district-wide thing as we move forward, and have it grow and be more and more as the time moves on. I was excited to see ones that I really liked, and I didn't even judge them, that got really good awards, and the kids and the families were excited. One of the things I also attended was I attended the Corte Sierra Family Night, and that was the night before the one at Mabel Pageant. And what I saw from those events is having our schools open, our families are ready to go and be there. If we open the doors and let them in, they're going to come excited to be there and celebrate their kids and see what's happening, interact with their teachers and the staff. So I am excited for us to have way more family events in the future now that we're getting into more of a normal thing for our students, because our families really, really want it. They were both super well attended, and I think that just shows that our families want to be engaged with our schools. Also, at the end of the year, one of the best weeks ever for me from my PTA days was Teacher Appreciation Week. I love spoiling our teachers because they are amazing rock stars all year long, and it's nice to be able to do that. So I was told that they didn't have a parent group at White Tanks, so therefore I was able to reach out to Lee Rosenthal from Peter Piper Pizza and get a lunch set up for that staff one day, and I was really excited to be able to honor those teachers and make sure that they also were getting love and attention that they deserve. And I loved seeing on all the parent groups all the different things that the different parent groups are doing for their teachers throughout the week to show them how much we appreciate everything that they have done. And I'll end this with, we have 8 more days left. We've got this. Our teachers and our staff are rock stars, and I hope that we are all proud of the progress that our students have made this year because of all the hard work that everyone has put in, and we all should be proud of that. I think that everyone is amazing that works in our district, and this job is not one that gets thanked all the time, and it can feel thankless at times, but me as a parent, as a community member, as a board member, I appreciate everything that everyone in our district does every day to make sure that our kids are loved and are learning and are growing, and I see what you're doing, and I think that more people see than you think, and I just hope that we can end this year on a high note.
Thank you, Board Member Zuidema. I will end this section of our agenda with my report, although it's been a long meeting, so I will forego the details of my schedule for the last month and simply express my gratitude and appreciation to all of our staff for doing your very best and giving your all to education this school year. I wish our staff, teachers, students, and families a safe and restful summer. And I'll close with one of my favorite summertime anthems, 3 Little Birds by Bob Marley. This is my message to you. Don't worry about a thing, because every little thing gonna be all right. Lastly, item 9C on our agenda is reports from administrators. This is information only, but I want to take a moment to thank everyone for putting these reports together. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's one of our lifelines to what you're actually doing in your day-to-day jobs, and it helps remind us of all of the hard work that you put in, whether you're on a campus or at the district office. We appreciate these reports, and as board members, we do read them and appreciate all the hard work that you put into those. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. This meeting is now adjourned.